My child, before you scroll away tonight, I need you to stop and listen to me carefully. I know your heart is tired. I saw you sitting alone in that dark room, while the rain tapped softly against the window. I saw the sleepless nights, the cold coffee left untouched on the table, the trembling hands covering your face while you tried so hard not to break down again. You smiled in front of people today, but deep inside you felt emotionally exhausted. And you thought nobody noticed, but I noticed everything. I have been watching the silent battles you never speak about. The fear, the anxiety, the quiet pain that keeps visiting you after midnight when the world becomes still and your thoughts grow louder. That is why this message found you tonight. Please do not ignore this moment. Before we continue, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. And if this message is already touching your spirit, gently subscribe and stay until the end. Because what I am about to reveal may change something inside your heart forever. My child, stay with me a little longer tonight. I know there are things inside your heart that you have never told another soul. The kind of pain that follows you quietly through crowded rooms. The kind that sits beside you at the edge of your bed after midnight when the world finally becomes silent enough for your thoughts to speak. And last night, I saw everything. I saw you lying awake in the darkness long after everyone else had fallen asleep. The faint glow from your phone illuminated your tired eyes while rain slid slowly down the window beside you. The room felt cold even beneath the blankets. The clock kept moving toward 3 a.m., yet sleep would not come near you. You kept pretending you were fine, but your spirit was exhausted. I saw the untouched coffee growing cold on the nightstand. I saw your trembling hands covering your mouth as tears quietly escaped your eyes. You tried so hard not to cry loudly because you did not want anyone else to hear your breaking heart. Even in your pain, you were still trying not to become a burden. My child, why do you keep carrying everything alone? Why do you speak gently to everyone else while speaking so harshly to yourself? I heard the thoughts inside your mind last night. The fear that maybe nothing will ever change. The fear that maybe you have prayed too many prayers without answers. The fear that maybe heaven has become silent toward you. But listen to me carefully tonight. I have never ignored your tears. Not one. I was there when you sat in the kitchen staring into nothing while the house felt unbearably quiet. I was there when distant sirens echoed through the wet streets outside and your heart suddenly felt heavier, for reasons you could not explain. I was there when anxiety wrapped itself around your chest so tightly that even breathing felt exhausting. You thought nobody noticed how much you were struggling to survive emotionally. But I noticed every second. I saw the messages you typed and deleted because you were afraid of sounding weak. I saw the silent prayers whispered into your pillow while your voice trembled. I saw you trying to smile earlier that day even though your soul felt numb inside. My child, you have been surviving for so long that you no longer remember what peace feels like. And that breaks my heart, because I never created you to live in constant fear, constant exhaustion, constant emotional loneliness. Yet somewhere along the way you started believing that your pain had to remain hidden. You convinced yourself that nobody would understand the battles happening inside your mind after midnight. But I understand. I understand the nights when memories suddenly return without warning. The nights when regret sits beside you like a shadow. The nights when your chest tightens because you feel like life keeps moving while your heart remains stuck in old wounds. I saw you trying not to fall apart last night. I saw you staring at the ceiling while thunder rolled softly in the distance. The room was dark, but your thoughts were louder than the storm outside. You kept asking questions you were too afraid to say out loud. Why am I still hurting? Why do I feel so alone? Why does it feel like everyone leaves eventually? My child, you have carried disappointment for so long that hope itself has started feeling dangerous to you. You are afraid to expect good things now because too many things once slipped through your hands unexpectedly. Too many doors closed. Too many prayers seemed delayed. Too many nights ended with silence instead of answers. So now you protect yourself emotionally by expecting the worst. But that is not the future I want for you. Listen to me carefully tonight. The exhaustion inside you is not weakness. The tears you hide are not failure. And the fact that you are still here after everything you have endured means there is still something sacred burning quietly inside your soul. Even if you cannot feel it clearly right now. You keep thinking you are falling apart, but what if you are actually standing at the edge of transformation? What if the silence you fear is not abandonment, but preparation? My child, there were moments last night when you almost gave up emotionally. Moments when the loneliness felt so heavy that you wondered if anyone would truly notice your absence. Moments when the darkness inside your thoughts became frighteningly deep. But I stayed beside you the entire time. When tears rolled down your face, I stayed. When anxiety shook your spirit, I stayed. When your faith became weak and tired, I stayed. I have not abandoned you. Even now, while you are listening to these words, something inside your spirit is beginning to soften, slowly, quietly, like the first light appearing after a long night storm. Healing rarely arrives loudly. Sometimes it begins with a whisper. Sometimes it begins with one message appearing at exactly the moment your soul needed it most. And maybe that is why you found this tonight. Not by accident, not randomly, but because your heart has been crying out for something deeper than distraction. Deeper than temporary comfort. Deeper than another empty promise from the world. You need peace, real peace, the kind that reaches the parts of you nobody else can see, my child. I know you are tired. I know there are nights when even getting out of bed feels emotionally heavy. I know there are mornings when you look into the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you because pain has changed you so deeply. But please hear me tonight. Your story is not over. The storm around you is not the final chapter. And the silence you fear so much still contains my presence. Right now, while rain falls somewhere outside your window and the night stretches quietly around you, I need you to hold on to one truth. I saw what happened last night. I saw every hidden tear. And I am still here, but there is something even deeper that you still do not understand about the silence you have been living through. My child, there is something I need you to understand tonight before your heart drifts any deeper into hopelessness. You keep believing that silence means I did not hear you, but silence and absence are not the same thing. I heard every prayer, even the ones that never fully left your lips. I heard the quiet whisper you spoke while sitting alone in your car beneath the dim parking lot lights. I heard the trembling prayer you made in the bathroom when the weight of pretending became too much to carry. I heard your exhausted voice during those sleepless nights when you stared into darkness and asked me if I was still there. And yes, I was. I was there every moment. But somewhere along the journey, disappointment slowly convinced your heart that heaven had forgotten your name. Each delayed answer became another brick in the wall forming around your faith. Every closed door felt personal. Every silence felt heavier. And eventually you stopped expecting miracles because disappointment felt safer than hope. My child, that was never what I wanted for you. Do you remember the prayer you cried months ago while rain hit the windows outside? The night when your chest hurt from holding back tears. You begged me to remove the pain, to change the situation, to send relief quickly because your spirit felt too exhausted to continue carrying everything alone. You thought I ignored that prayer, but I was already working in places you could not see. You see only the waiting, but I see the entire road ahead of you. You see closed doors, but I see dangers those doors were protecting you from. You see delay, but I see timing. There were moments when I kept certain things away from you because your heart was already too wounded to survive the consequences attached to them. There were people you begged me to keep in your life who would have slowly destroyed your peace if they had remained. There were opportunities you cried over losing that would have deepened the emptiness already growing inside you. My child, not every unanswered prayer is rejection. Sometimes it is protection wrapped in silence. I know that truth is difficult to accept when you are sitting alone at 2 a.m. with tears in your eyes and unanswered questions in your chest. I know it is hard to trust me when life keeps unfolding differently than you imagined, especially after all the nights you begged for relief while nothing seemed to change. But listen to me carefully tonight. Some prayers take longer because your soul is being prepared for what your hands are asking to receive. And preparation often feels lonely. That is the part nobody talks about. The waiting seasons, the quiet seasons, the seasons where heaven feels distant while your heart quietly fights to keep believing. My child, I saw how close you came to giving up during those moments. I saw you scrolling endlessly at night, trying to distract yourself from the ache inside your spirit. I saw the exhaustion in your eyes while everyone around you assumed you were simply tired from life. But it was deeper than tiredness, wasn't it? It was emotional starvation. You needed reassurance. You needed comfort. You needed one sign that your prayers still mattered. And tonight I am giving you that sign, because I cannot stay silent anymore while your heart slowly convinces itself that it has been abandoned. You have cried prayers that nobody else knows about. Prayers about fear, prayers about loneliness, prayers about the future, prayers whispered through shaking breaths while thunder echoed outside and your room felt unbearably empty. And there were nights when you stopped praying halfway through because disappointment already convinced you nothing would happen anyway. But I still listened. Even your silence speaks to me. My child, there is a reason your soul feels exhausted lately. You have been carrying questions too heavy for one heart to hold alone. Questions about your purpose. Questions about why certain wounds never fully healed. Questions about why some mornings feel emotionally impossible before the day even begins. You kept asking where I was. But what if I was sitting beside you in every silent moment? What if I was the reason you survived nights that should have emotionally destroyed you? What if the strength keeping you alive did not come from you alone? Because there were moments recently when your spirit became dangerously tired. Moments when darkness whispered lies into your mind. Lies telling you that nobody would notice your pain. Lies telling you that healing would never come. Lies telling you that your life would always feel this heavy. And still you survived. Do you know why? Because I never stopped holding on to you even while your faith was slipping through exhausted fingers. My child, I know you are tired of hearing people say, just be patient. I know patience feels cruel when your heart has already endured so much disappointment, especially when you watch others receiving blessings while your prayers seem trapped inside silence. But heaven has not forgotten you, not for 1 second. There are things moving right now that you cannot yet see. Quiet changes, invisible protection, doors shifting slowly, hearts being redirected, storms being delayed before they can reach you completely. And yes, some things had to fall apart first. I know that hurt you deeply. I know there are memories that still wake you up unexpectedly at night. Memories that replay while distant sirens echo outside and your room feels cold with loneliness. Sometimes you still wonder whether you failed somehow, whether you deserved the heartbreak, whether your mistakes permanently separated you from peace. But hear me tonight. Your wounds are not proof that I abandoned you. Sometimes brokenness becomes the place where healing first begins breathing again. My child, I need you to hold on to me a little longer, even if your faith feels weak, even if your prayers sound tired, even if your hope barely survives from one night to the next, because the story is not finished yet, and there is one prayer from your past that still carries more power than you realize. My child, the exhaustion inside you did not appear overnight. It happened slowly, quietly, like rain collecting on a window one drop at a time until suddenly, the glass could no longer stay clear. You keep telling yourself you are simply tired, that maybe you just need more sleep, more motivation, more discipline, more distractions to keep your mind busy. But the heaviness you feel goes deeper than physical exhaustion. Your soul is tired, and I need you to understand why. For a long time now, you have been carrying emotional weight that was never meant for your heart to hold alone. You kept surviving one painful moment after another without ever truly stopping to heal. You learned how to function while wounded, You learned how to smile while emotionally numb. You learned how to comfort others while quietly falling apart inside. But survival is not peace, and your spirit knows the difference. That is why even during quiet moments your chest still feels heavy. That is why the silence at night feels unbearable sometimes. That is why your thoughts grow louder after midnight when distractions disappear, and the hidden pain inside you finally begins speaking again. I saw it last night. You sat there staring into the darkness while thunder rolled softly outside your window. Your body was exhausted, but your mind refused to rest. Memories kept returning. Regrets replayed themselves again and again. Questions circled endlessly inside your head. You wanted peace, but instead you felt emotionally trapped. My child, you have spent so much time trying to stay strong for everyone else that you forgot how fragile your own heart has become. Every disappointment added another invisible wound. Every betrayal taught you to trust less. Every unanswered prayer quietly drained more hope from your spirit. And now you wonder why even simple days feel emotionally heavy. It is because your soul has been fighting battles in silence for far too long. There are wounds inside you that nobody around you fully sees. People notice your smile, your routine, your ability to keep going. But they do not hear the silent war happening inside your thoughts when you lie awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling. They do not see the exhaustion hidden behind your eyes. But I do. I saw the moment your faith started feeling tired instead of comforting. I saw the moment prayer became difficult because disappointment had already convinced your heart to expect silence. I saw the moment fear slowly replaced peace inside your spirit. And still you kept going. That is what makes this exhaustion so dangerous, my child. You became too good at hiding it. You kept telling yourself, I'll be okay. You kept saying, I just need to get through this week. But weeks became months. And now your soul feels like it has been carrying storms without rest for far too long. You wake up emotionally tired. You walk through the day emotionally tired. You fall asleep emotionally tired. Even moments that should bring joy feel distant because part of your spirit remains trapped in survival mode. Your body keeps moving forward, but your heart still feels stuck somewhere inside old pain. My child, listen to me carefully tonight. You were never meant to live disconnected from peace. You were never meant to constantly carry fear about the future, regret about the past, and anxiety about things you cannot control. Yet somewhere along the journey, those emotions quietly became normal to you. That is why your soul feels exhausted now, because hidden pain consumes energy. Unspoken grief consumes energy. Pretending consumes energy. There are nights when you sit in silence with tears filling your eyes, yet you cannot even explain exactly why you are hurting anymore. The sadness became too layered, too old, too tangled inside your heart. And that frightens you sometimes. You wonder if you are slowly losing yourself. But my child, you are not losing yourself. You are reaching the moment where your soul can no longer survive without healing. That is why this message found you tonight. Because I cannot remain silent while your spirit quietly collapses beneath burdens you were never designed to carry alone. I know about the loneliness. I know about the nights when the room feels unbearably quiet and distant. Sirens echo through wet streets outside your window, while anxiety wraps around your chest like cold chains. I know about the mornings when getting out of bed already feels emotionally overwhelming before the day even begins. I know there are moments when you secretly wish someone would notice how much pain you are hiding without forcing you to explain it out loud. And my child, I notice, I always have. But there is another reason your spirit feels so drained lately. You keep holding on to things that are hurting you. Old guilt, old heartbreak, old disappointment, old fear. You replay painful memories like your mind is searching for a different ending. You carry conversations that should have been released months ago. You punish yourself for mistakes I already forgave. You keep reopening wounds that heaven has been trying to heal. And every time you do, your spirit grows heavier. My child, pain was never meant to become your permanent home. Yet I know part of you has become afraid to let it go, because pain became familiar, predictable, safe in a strange way. If you release the hurt, then you must also risk hope again. And hope terrifies you now because disappointment once broke your heart so deeply. So instead you remain emotionally guarded. You expect abandonment before connection. You expect silence before comfort. You expect heartbreak before healing. But I need you to hear me tonight. Not every chapter of your life will end in loss. Not every prayer will end in silence. Not every night will feel this heavy forever. Healing is already beginning even if you cannot fully feel it yet. Slowly, quietly, like morning light creeping through curtains after the longest night imaginable. My child, I know your faith feels weak right now. I know there are moments when you struggle to trust me fully because life wounded you in places nobody else can reach. But weak faith still reaches heaven. Even exhausted prayers still reach me. Even tears count as prayers sometimes. And tonight, while the rain falls softly somewhere outside and your tired heart listens in silence, I need you to understand something important. Your exhaustion is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that your soul has been carrying too much for too long. But there is still something inside you that refuses to completely surrender to darkness. And soon, I am going to show you exactly what has been quietly draining the life out of your spirit all this time. My child, tonight I need to speak to you about something you have been hiding even from yourself. The pain you keep carrying, not the pain others can see, not the tired smile or the quiet silence you wear during the day. I am talking about the deeper pain. The hidden ache you protect so carefully inside your heart because part of you believes that if you finally release it, everything inside you might completely fall apart. But my child, holding on to it is already breaking you slowly. I know why you keep returning to those old wounds. I know why certain memories still visit you after midnight while rain taps against the windows and the room feels unbearably empty. I know why your chest tightens every time your mind drifts back towards certain moments you wish had ended differently. Because pain became attached to your identity. You no longer know who you are without carrying it. And that frightens you more than you admit. There are nights when you sit alone in silence replaying conversations that already ended long ago. You revisit the disappointment, the betrayal, the abandonment, the regret. You wonder what you could have done differently. You search through old memories trying to find the exact moment everything started breaking apart. But my child, some wounds cannot heal because you keep reopening them every night. I saw you last night. The storm outside had finally quieted, but the storm inside your heart was still raging. Your room was dark except for the faint light glowing from across the floor. You sat there with trembling hands staring into nothing while your thoughts carried you backward again. Back toward the pain, back toward the guilt, back toward the heartbreak. And once again you blamed yourself for things that were never entirely your burden to carry. My child, why are you punishing yourself for surviving? Why do you speak to yourself with such cruelty? You forgive others so easily sometimes. You offer compassion to people who hurt you. You understand their wounds, their trauma, their fears, yet when it comes to your own brokenness, you show yourself no mercy at all. You replay your mistakes endlessly. You relive your failures repeatedly. You keep whispering to yourself, if only I had done this differently. But listen to me carefully tonight. Your mistakes are not greater than my mercy, and your pain is not stronger than my ability to heal. I know there are things you regret deeply, words you wish you never said, moments you wish you could relive, decisions that still haunt your thoughts during sleepless nights. Sometimes you wonder if your life would feel different now, if only you had made one different choice. Sometimes the regret feels so heavy that it follows you into every quiet moment. Even simple things remind you of what was lost, and because of that, you have become emotionally trapped between the past and the future, too wounded to fully move forward, too exhausted to keep looking backward. My child, this is why your spirit feels so tired. You are carrying ghosts that heaven has been asking you to release. I know part of you fears letting go because pain feels connected to memory. You are afraid that healing means forgetting, afraid that peace means the past no longer mattered. But healing does not erase your story. It simply removes the poison from the wound. There are still nights when loneliness wraps around you so tightly that even breathing feels difficult. Nights when distant sirens echo through wet streets outside while your thoughts grow darker and heavier. Nights when you quietly wonder whether anybody truly understands how much emotional weight you carry every day. And during those nights, you often return to familiar pain, because it feels easier than facing uncertainty. At least pain is predictable. At least disappointment feels familiar. Hope, however, hope feels dangerous now, because every time you hoped before, something inside you broke. So now you protect yourself by expecting less from life. Less from people. Less from the future. Sometimes even less from me. But my child, hopelessness is not safety. It is emotional imprisonment. I did not create your heart to live chained to old wounds forever. And tonight I need you to begin loosening your grip on the pain that has quietly been draining the life out of your spirit. Not all at once. Slowly. Gently. Like someone learning how to breathe again after surviving underwater too long. I know healing scares you, because if you finally let yourself heal, then you must also face the possibility of being vulnerable again. You must believe peace is possible again. You must trust that tomorrow may not hurt as much as yesterday did. And right now that feels difficult for you, especially after everything your heart has endured. I know there are moments when you still feel emotionally abandoned. Moments when the silence inside your room becomes so heavy that tears fall before you even realize you are crying. Moments when your body is physically present but your soul feels far away from everyone around you. But my child, I have never stopped reaching toward you, even during the nights when you pushed everyone away emotionally. Even during the nights when your prayers sounded angry, confused, or numb. Even during the nights when you questioned whether I still cared at all. I remained beside you. Do you know why? Because I understand how wounded hearts behave. Pain makes people build walls. Fear makes people isolate themselves. Disappointment makes people expect abandonment before love. And you, my child, have been carrying all three. That is why your soul trembles every time peace tries to enter your life. Part of you still expects it to disappear unexpectedly. Part of you still waits for the next heartbreak before joy can fully settle into your spirit. But hear me tonight. Not everything beautiful will leave you. Not every peaceful moment is temporary. Not every season ends in devastation. There is healing waiting for you beyond this pain. Real healing. The kind that reaches your exhausted mind at 3 a.m. The kind that softens anxiety slowly. The kind that teaches your heart how to rest again. But before that healing fully begins, you must stop worshiping your wounds. You must stop building your identity around brokenness. You must stop believing your pain is the only proof your story mattered. My child, your story is still unfolding. And what hurts you now will not define you forever. But there is something even deeper hidden beneath this pain. Something that began breaking your heart long before you realized it. And soon I am going to bring that hidden wound into the light. My child, your faith did not disappear all at once. It faded quietly, slowly. Like a candle losing its flame little by little in a cold room. There was no dramatic moment, no loud announcement, no single night where you suddenly stopped believing in me completely. Instead, it happened through exhaustion, through disappointment, through carrying pain for too long without understanding why heaven seemed so silent. And I saw every part of it. I saw the exact moment your prayers began sounding different. The exact moment hope started trembling inside your chest instead of resting there peacefully. The exact moment your heart became afraid to trust me fully, because life had wounded you so deeply. You still prayed, but part of you no longer expected answers. That is what broke your spirit slowly. Do you remember those nights when you would sit alone after everyone else had gone to sleep, the house quiet? The rain sliding down the windows, the faint sound of distant traffic moving through wet streets outside while you stared into darkness, wondering if I still heard you at all. You kept whispering, "Where are you?" But deep inside you feared the silence was the answer. My child, I know why your faith became tired. Too many things happened that you never expected. Too many losses arrived without warning. Too many prayers seemed delayed while your heart desperately searched for reassurance. And every disappointment added another layer of confusion between us, until eventually you stopped feeling close to me. the way you once did. You missed the peace you used to feel, the certainty, the comfort. But pain changed the way you saw everything, even me. There were mornings when you woke up emotionally numb before the day had even begun. You went through routines mechanically while something inside your spirit quietly drifted farther into exhaustion. Smiles became performances, conversations became distractions, nights became battles between your mind and your loneliness. And still, you kept pretending you were okay, but I saw the hidden fear growing inside you. The fear that maybe you were becoming spiritually empty. The fear that maybe your heart had changed too much to ever feel close to me again. The fear that maybe faith was something other people could hold on to, but not you anymore. My child, listen carefully tonight. Weak faith is still faith. The fact that you kept searching for me even while hurting proves your soul never fully stopped reaching toward heaven. Even when you questioned me, even when frustration filled your prayers, even when silence made your heart ache, you still searched, and I never stopped listening. But there was one particular moment, one wound that quietly changed something inside you more than you realize. You rarely speak about it. Most people around you probably do not even know how deeply it affected you. But I know. I remember the night clearly. The air felt heavy. Your chest tightened with disappointment. Something inside your heart broke silently while the world around you continued moving as if nothing had happened. And afterward you became different, more guarded, more anxious, more emotionally distant. You stopped expecting good things with the same innocence you once had. You stopped allowing yourself to hope freely because disappointment had taught you that hope could hurt. So instead you learned how to emotionally prepare for loss before it even arrived. My child, that is not peace. That is survival born from heartbreak. I know there are moments now when worship feels empty to you. Moments when prayer feels difficult because your mind immediately fills with unanswered questions. Moments when you sit in silence wondering whether your relationship with me can ever feel alive again. And sometimes that thought terrifies you, because deep inside you still want to believe. You still want to feel close to me. You still want peace to return to your soul. But emotional exhaustion keeps pulling you backward into numbness. Last night was another example of it. You tried distracting yourself from the heaviness inside your heart. You scrolled endlessly. You kept yourself busy. You avoided sitting alone with your thoughts because part of you already knew what would happen if the silence became too loud. The sadness would return. The memories would return. The fear would return. And eventually there you were again, lying awake in darkness while the clock moved toward 3 a.m., wondering why your soul felt so distant from peace lately. My child, I was beside you in that moment too. I saw the tears you wiped away quickly. I heard the exhausted sighs. I heard the prayer you almost whispered before stopping halfway through because disappointment interrupted your faith again. And that moment hurt me deeply, not because you doubted, but because pain convinced you that your doubts made you unworthy of my presence. Listen to me carefully tonight. You do not have to hide your brokenness from me. You do not have to pretend your faith is stronger than it feels. You do not have to speak perfectly spiritual words while your heart quietly bleeds underneath them. I already know the truth. I know how tired you are. I know how many nights you secretly wondered whether anybody truly understands the battles in your mind. I know how frightening loneliness becomes when darkness fills the room and your thoughts refuse to quiet down. And I know something else too. Your faith may feel weak right now, but it is not dead. If it were dead, this message would not be touching your spirit the way it is tonight. Deep inside you, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the fear, beneath the disappointment, there is still a part of your soul longing to believe again, longing to rest again, longing to feel safe again. And my child, I am going to help you find your way back slowly, not through shame, not through fear, but through healing, real healing. The kind that reaches into the hidden places inside your heart, where disappointment quietly built walls over time. The kind that teaches your spirit how to trust peace again after surviving too many emotional storms. But before healing fully begins, there is something you still need to recognize. Something has been speaking into your mind during these lonely nights. Something dark, something dangerous. And if I remained silent any longer, It would slowly convince you to disappear emotionally from the world around you forever. My child, there is something happening around your spirit that you cannot afford to ignore anymore. And tonight I need you to hear me carefully. Not every thought in your mind belongs to peace. Not every voice whispering into your exhaustion speaks truth. For a long time now, there has been a quiet battle surrounding your heart. A battle so subtle that most people around you would never notice it. But I see it clearly. I see the darkness trying to convince you that your pain will never end. I see the fear trying to isolate you emotionally from the people who care about you. I see the hopelessness slowly wrapping itself around your spirit during those lonely midnight hours. And my child, I cannot stay silent about it anymore. The enemy rarely arrives loudly. It does not always appear through chaos or destruction at first. Sometimes it arrives through exhaustion, through numbness, through silent thoughts repeated night after night until they begin sounding like truth. Thoughts like, you will never heal, you are too broken now, nobody truly understands you, things will never change, your life will always feel this empty. My child, those whispers are not from me. I know you have heard them recently, especially during the nights when the room grows quiet and your thoughts become heavier than your body can carry. Especially during those moments when rain hits the windows softly and your chest tightens for reasons you cannot even explain anymore. I saw it happen again last night. You were sitting there in silence while the faint glow from the streetlights slipped through the curtains. Your phone rested beside you untouched for several minutes because even distraction no longer felt comforting. The exhaustion inside your spirit had become too deep, and then the thoughts returned. The dark ones, the dangerous ones, the thoughts telling you to emotionally disappear from everyone around you. The thoughts telling you that isolation would hurt less than vulnerability. The thoughts telling you nobody would notice how deeply you are struggling. My child, listen to me carefully tonight. That battle is real, but you are not fighting it alone. I know there are moments when anxiety suddenly crashes over you without warning. Moments when your heart races while your room remains completely still. Moments when fear enters your thoughts so quietly that you almost mistake it for your own voice. And afterward you feel ashamed for struggling, ashamed for overthinking, ashamed for feeling emotionally weak. But I need you to understand something important tonight. You are not weak because you are tired. You are tired because you have been fighting invisible battles for too long without rest. Battles nobody else fully sees. Battles hidden behind polite conversations and forced smiles. Battles happening silently inside your chest while the world assumes you are simply going through a phase. But my child, your soul has been under attack through hopelessness. The enemy knows something about you that you keep forgetting. You still carry purpose, even now, even exhausted, even wounded. Even while your faith struggles to breathe beneath the weight of disappointment. And because of that, darkness keeps trying to convince you to surrender emotionally before healing fully reaches you. Do you know why your mind becomes loudest after midnight? Because silence removes distractions. And when distractions disappear, hidden wounds begin speaking again. That is why you suddenly remember old regrets while lying awake in darkness. That is why loneliness feels heavier around 3 a.m. That is why fear grows stronger during sleepless nights, while distant sirens echo through wet streets outside your window. The battle becomes louder in silence, but so does my voice. And tonight I need you to stop listening to the lies that have been draining life from your spirit. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not beyond healing, and you are not meant to carry this darkness alone, my child. I saw how close you came recently to emotionally shutting down completely. You kept telling yourself you were simply overwhelmed, simply tired, simply stressed. But deep inside part of you was slowly beginning to disappear beneath the weight of unresolved pain. You stopped reaching out, stopped explaining, stopped expecting comfort. You became emotionally quieter because disappointment convinced you vulnerability was dangerous. And little by little, isolation became normal to you. But isolation is where hopelessness grows strongest. That is why I am speaking so urgently tonight, because I know what happens when pain remains hidden too long. It starts changing the way you see yourself, the way you see others, the way you see me. Eventually, you stop believing peace is even possible anymore. And that is exactly what darkness wants. Not necessarily to destroy you immediately, but to slowly convince you that healing will never come. To slowly convince you that your future contains nothing except more exhaustion, more loneliness, more disappointment. But my child, that future does not belong to you. I know you are weary. I know there are moments when your body feels physically present while your spirit feels far away from everything around you. Moments when you sit alone with cold coffee beside you while thunder rolls softly outside and tears quietly fill your eyes for reasons you cannot explain to anyone. But hear me tonight. The fact that you are still fighting means something sacred inside you refuses to fully surrender. Even now, even after all the heartbreak, even after all the silence, even after all the nights you questioned whether you could continue carrying this emotional weight, you are still here. And that matters more than you realize. Because some nights were far darker than anyone around you knows. Some nights your thoughts frightened you. Some nights hopelessness sat beside your bed whispering that disappearing emotionally would be easier than continuing to survive this exhaustion. And yet, something kept holding you back from fully collapsing. Do you know what that was? Me. I was the quiet strength beneath your breaking spirit. I was the reason your heart kept beating through nights that should have destroyed your peace completely. I was the voice gently whispering, "Hold on a little longer. My child, please listen carefully now. Do not trust every thought that visits you during your darkest hours. Pain distorts perspective. Fear distorts truth. Exhaustion distorts hope. And right now, your spirit is too wounded to fight this battle alone without my help. That is why I sent this message tonight, not to shame you, not to frighten you, but to interrupt the darkness before it convinces you to disappear inside your pain forever. Because there is something the enemy fears deeply about your future, something beautiful, something healing, something that has not fully arrived yet, and soon. I am going to show you why your silent prayers still carry far more power than you realize, my child. Some of your deepest prayers were never spoken with words, and yet I heard every one of them. I heard the prayer hidden inside your silence. When you sat alone in the dark with tears running down your face, I heard the prayer inside the exhausted sigh you released while staring out the rain-covered window at 2 a.m. I heard the prayer trembling quietly beneath your anxiety while your hands shook and your chest felt unbearably heavy. You thought prayer only counted when spoken clearly, but heaven also listens to broken silence. There were nights when your pain became too deep for language. Nights when all you could do was sit there in emotional exhaustion while the world around you slept peacefully. Your mind felt crowded with fear, grief, confusion, and loneliness all at once. You wanted to pray, but you no longer knew what to say. So instead you cried, and I listened. My child, I know there were moments when you felt ashamed for becoming emotionally numb. Ashamed because you used to feel stronger spiritually. You used to believe more easily. You used to pray with confidence instead of exhaustion. But pain changed the way your heart speaks, and I understand that. I saw you last night when the silence inside your room became almost unbearable. The television was off. Your phone screen had gone dark beside you. Rain tapped softly against the glass while distant thunder rolled somewhere far away. The world felt cold and strangely empty around you. And there you sat, staring downward with tears filling your eyes while trying to understand why your spirit felt so tired lately. You did not say anything aloud, but I heard your heart asking, "How much longer can I keep carrying this? Will things ever feel peaceful again? Am I becoming someone I no longer recognize?" My child, those questions reached me immediately. You are not invisible to heaven, not during your loudest prayers, and not during your quietest breakdowns. There are tears you cried that nobody else knows about. Tears hidden behind locked bathroom doors, tears wiped away quickly before anyone could notice. Tears falling silently onto pillows during sleepless nights while the clock moved slowly toward morning. And every single one mattered to me. I need you to understand something tonight. You do not have to perform strength for me. You do not have to hide your exhaustion. You do not have to pretend your faith feels unshakable while your soul quietly struggles to survive another lonely night. I already know the truth inside your heart. I know about the emotional numbness that frightens you sometimes. The way joy feels distant lately. The way simple tasks feel heavier than they should. The way you isolate yourself emotionally because explaining your pain feels too exhausting. I know, and still I remain beside you, my child. There were moments recently when you almost convinced yourself that nobody would truly miss you emotionally if you disappeared into silence completely. Not physically gone, but emotionally unreachable. You became so overwhelmed by hidden pain that part of you wanted to stop feeling altogether. No more disappointment, no more heartbreak, no more anxiety, just numbness. But numbness is not peace. It is what happens when the heart becomes too wounded to keep bleeding openly. And I know your heart has been bleeding quietly for a very long time. That is why even small things affect you more deeply now. A certain song, a certain memory, a quiet room, a rainy night, the sound of church bells in the distance, the sight of empty streets beneath streetlights after midnight. Everything touches the wound inside you, because your spirit has become emotionally fragile from carrying too much pain alone. But hear me carefully tonight, my child. Fragility is not failure. Sometimes fragile hearts are simply hearts that loved deeply, hoped deeply, trusted deeply, and survived disappointment anyway. And despite everything, your heart still longs for peace. That longing itself is proof that darkness has not fully taken hold of your spirit. I know you feel tired. I know there are mornings when you wake up already emotionally exhausted before the day even begins. I know there are nights when anxiety sits beside your bed, whispering fears about the future while cold coffee grows untouched nearby, and thunder rolls softly beyond the window. But even during those moments, your soul continues reaching toward me in ways you do not realize. Every exhausted breath, every trembling tear, every silent ache, every moment you whispered, "Help me," even inside your thoughts alone. I heard all of it, my child. There is something sacred about honest brokenness. Not because pain itself is beautiful, but because wounded hearts stop pretending. They stop performing perfection. They stop hiding behind empty appearances. And that is where true healing begins. Not in performance, not in pretending, but in honesty. You have spent so long trying to appear okay while secretly drowning emotionally. Smiling through conversations, saying "I'm fine" while your soul quietly begged for rest. Carrying invisible grief while everyone around you assumed you were simply tired from life. But I saw the deeper truth. I saw the nights when you sat alone at the kitchen table long after midnight because sleep refused to come. I saw you staring into darkness while your thoughts spiraled through fear and regret. I saw the trembling hands, the tired eyes, the hidden tears falling silently into your lap while nobody else knew how close you were to emotionally collapsing. And still, I stayed beside you when your faith became weak. I stayed beside you when your prayers became silent. I stayed beside you when disappointment made your heart distant. Because my love for you was never dependent on your emotional strength. My child, you keep believing you must heal quickly to deserve peace again. But healing rarely happens suddenly. Most healing begins quietly, slowly, like sunrise appearing through darkness, one small ray at a time. And tonight, something inside your spirit is beginning to awaken again. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently. Like warmth returning to frozen hands, like breathing deeply after surviving underwater too long. You may not fully feel it yet, but your soul is already responding to my voice. Because deep down beneath the exhaustion and fear and numbness, there is still a part of you longing to trust me completely again. But there is one truth you still keep hidden deep inside your heart. One wound you have not fully admitted even to yourself. And until that hidden truth comes into the light, your spirit will continue carrying a heaviness that was never meant to remain there forever. My child, you are so tired because you have been carrying a version of yourself that no longer matches the truth inside your heart. You keep pretending you are stronger than you actually feel, not because you are fake, but because somewhere along the way you learned that showing pain made you feel unsafe. So now you hide it. You hide it behind polite smiles, behind short conversations, behind I'm okay, behind staying busy, behind acting like exhaustion is normal. But my child, your soul is crying out beneath that performance, and I need you to stop pretending tonight. I know how often you sit quietly around other people while feeling completely alone inside. I know how many times you laughed during conversations even though your chest felt heavy with sadness. I know how many nights you returned home emotionally drained from carrying invisible weight nobody around you noticed. You became an expert at appearing functional while secretly breaking apart. But I saw the truth last night. I saw you sitting alone in the dim light of that quiet room, while rainwater slid slowly down the glass outside. The coffee beside you had gone cold hours earlier, but you barely noticed. Your body sat still, yet your thoughts were running endlessly through fears you could no longer escape. You looked exhausted, not physically, spiritually, emotionally, the kind of exhaustion sleep cannot fix. And still, part of you kept whispering, just stay strong. My child, who told you that surviving silently was strength? Who taught you that vulnerability was weakness? Because the truth is this, you have not been healing. You have been performing healing. There is a difference. Real healing allows tears. Real healing admits exhaustion. Real healing does not force your heart to smile while it is still bleeding underneath. But you became afraid of burdening people with your pain. Afraid of sounding too emotional. Afraid that if others saw the depth of your sadness, they might slowly pull away. So instead you built emotional walls. Walls around your grief. Walls around your anxiety. Walls around your loneliness. And eventually those walls became so familiar that you forgot how isolated your soul had become inside them. My child, I know there are moments when you feel emotionally invisible even in crowded places. Moments when everyone around you seems connected while your spirit quietly drifts farther into numbness. Moments when you sit alone at night staring into darkness wondering why peace feels easier for everyone else. But peace was never meant to be earned through pretending. And tonight I need you to understand something important. The pressure to always appear strong is slowly crushing your spirit. I saw it in the way your hands trembled slightly last night while you tried holding everything together emotionally. I saw it in the way your breathing changed when painful memories suddenly returned. I saw the tears forming in your eyes while you kept fighting to remain composed even though nobody else was there to witness your breakdown. Why are you still hiding from me, my child? I already see every wound. I already know every fear. I already know the thoughts you never say aloud, because they frighten even you sometimes. The fear that maybe you are becoming emotionally empty. The fear that maybe life has damaged your heart too deeply. The fear that maybe nobody would fully understand how exhausted you truly are. And perhaps the deepest fear of all, that if you finally stop pretending to be strong, everything inside you might completely collapse. But listen carefully tonight. You do not need to collapse alone anymore. I know you have carried responsibilities while secretly falling apart emotionally. I know there were days when your heart felt shattered, yet you still got up and handled everything expected of you. I know there were nights when loneliness wrapped itself around your spirit so tightly that even breathing felt heavy. And still, Deceit, you kept telling yourself to stay strong. My child, strength is not pretending pain does not exist. Strength is allowing yourself to be honest before me. Strength is admitting that your soul is tired. Strength is whispering, I cannot carry this alone anymore. Do you know why your spirit feels so emotionally numb lately? Because hidden pain eventually disconnects the heart from itself. You became so focused on surviving that you stopped listening to your own emotional wounds. You ignored the exhaustion, ignored the grief, ignored the anxiety, ignored the loneliness. You pushed everything deeper because you believed stopping to feel it all would destroy you. But buried pain does not disappear. It waits, and eventually it rises again during silent nights when distractions fade away. That is why your thoughts become loudest after midnight. That is why your chest tightens unexpectedly. That is why certain songs, memories, or empty rooms suddenly make tears appear without warning. Your soul has been begging for release, and tonight I am asking you to stop punishing yourself for being human. My child, you are allowed to feel exhausted after everything you have survived. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to admit that some wounds still hurt. You are allowed to say, I am not okay right now. That honesty does not push me away. It brings you closer to healing. I know part of you still fears vulnerability because people in the past mishandled your trust. Some ignored your pain. Some misunderstood your silence. Some only loved the version of you that appeared strong and easy to understand. So now you protect yourself by revealing very little emotionally. But isolation has become its own prison. You sit beside people while feeling unseen. You answer messages while secretly craving deeper connection. You go through routines while emotionally starving for peace. And worst of all, you started believing this emptiness was normal. But it is not normal, my child. It is survival mode, and I did not create your spirit to permanently live there. That is why I brought you here tonight. Because behind the strong version of yourself, you keep showing the world is a deeply exhausted heart that desperately needs gentleness, healing, and rest. Real rest, not distraction, not temporary escape, but peace. The kind of peace that reaches into your anxious thoughts at 3 a.m. The kind of peace that quiets the fear inside your chest. The kind of peace that teaches your soul it no longer has to survive alone. But before that peace fully reaches you, there is something else I must warn you about. If you continue burying this pain, it will slowly convince your spirit that numbness is safer than living fully again. And that lie could steal years of your life before you even realize what happened. My child, tonight I must speak to you with urgency, because the path you are walking right now is draining the life out of your spirit little by little. And if nothing changes the exhaustion inside, you will continue growing heavier until you no longer recognize yourself at all. I know those words sound serious, but I need you to hear the truth. You have been surviving in emotional darkness for so long that part of you has started accepting it as normal. The sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the numbness, the isolation, the endless overthinking after midnight while rain taps softly against your window and the silence inside the room feels louder than thunder. My child, this is not the peace I created for you. And if I stayed silent any longer, the sadness surrounding your spirit would slowly convince you to stop truly living altogether. Not all destruction happens suddenly. Some destruction happens quietly, slowly, hidden beneath routines. You wake up, go through the day, answer messages, smile when necessary, pretend everything is manageable, then return home emotionally exhausted, carrying invisible pain no one else fully sees. And each day, the emptiness inside your spirit grows a little deeper. I saw it again last night. You sat alone in that dim room long after midnight while cold coffee rested untouched beside you. Your body felt heavy, but your mind refused to rest. Thoughts kept moving through your head like storms you could not quiet. What is wrong with me? Why do I feel so empty lately? Will I ever feel normal again? My child, listen carefully tonight. There is nothing weak about struggling, but there is danger in continuing to ignore the condition of your soul, because pain left untreated begins changing the way you see life itself. You stop expecting joy. You stop believing peace will last. You stop trusting people fully. Eventually, you stop trusting yourself. And then darkness quietly begins convincing you that numbness is safer than hope. That isolation is safer than connection. That emotional distance is safer than vulnerability. But those lies are slowly stealing your life from you. I know why you withdrew emotionally. I know why your spirit became guarded. Life wounded you deeply. People disappointed you. Situations broke your trust. And after enough heartbreak, your heart decided survival mattered more than openness. So now you protect yourself constantly. You stay emotionally cautious. You keep parts of yourself hidden. You avoid getting too hopeful because disappointment once hurt too much. But my child, emotional survival is not the same as living. You were not created merely to endure endless exhaustion. You were created for peace, for purpose, for healing, for connection. And right now your spirit is starving for those things. That is why even simple moments feel emotionally heavy lately. That is why your chest tightens unexpectedly during quiet nights. That is why certain memories still have power over your thoughts long after they should have lost control over your heart. Your soul is trying to tell you something. It cannot continue carrying all this hidden pain alone. I know there are moments when hopelessness feels strangely comforting now, because at least hopelessness prepares you for disappointment. If you expect nothing, then nothing can hurt you anymore. Or so you think. But hopelessness is slowly draining the color from your life. You do not laugh the same way anymore. You do not dream the same way anymore. You do not trust peace the same way anymore. And the saddest part is this. You have become so accustomed to emotional heaviness that you barely notice how deeply it affects you now. But I notice the way your eyes looked last night while staring into darkness. I noticed how emotionally tired your soul felt beneath the sins. I noticed the fear growing inside you every time your thoughts drifted toward the future. Because part of you no longer believes good things can happen without eventually falling apart. My child, that belief is dangerous, not because it makes you evil, but because it slowly disconnects your heart from hope itself. And without hope, the soul begins collapsing quietly from within. That is why I'm speaking so urgently tonight, because I know what happens when wounded hearts isolate themselves too long. Eventually, loneliness begins sounding truthful. Anxiety begins sounding wise. Fear begins sounding protective. And sadness becomes so familiar that healing itself starts feeling uncomfortable. You are closer to that place than you realize. There have been nights recently when your thoughts became frighteningly dark. Nights when emotional exhaustion whispered dangerous things into your spirit. Nights when you wondered if anyone would truly understand the depth of your hidden pain if they could see inside your heart completely. And afterward you felt ashamed for thinking those thoughts at all. But my child, I am not condemning you tonight. I am warning you because I love you. You cannot continue burying your wounds while pretending everything is fine. You cannot continue feeding hopelessness while expecting peace to grow inside your spirit. You cannot continue isolating yourself emotionally while your soul quietly cries out for connection and healing. Something must change. And it begins here, tonight, right now, not through dramatic perfection, not through pretending your pain suddenly disappeared, but through honesty. Honesty about how exhausted you truly are. Honesty about how deeply loneliness has affected your heart. Honesty about how frightened you feel sometimes when darkness enters your thoughts after midnight. My child, bringing pain into the light is how healing begins breathing again. I know vulnerability terrifies you now. I know part of you fears falling apart completely if you finally stop pretending to be strong. But what if the breaking you fear is actually the beginning of freedom? Because you cannot heal what you continue hiding, and you cannot find peace while secretly building your identity around pain. Listen to me carefully tonight. You are not too broken. You are not too far gone, and your exhaustion is not permanent. Even now, while your spirit feels weary and your faith trembles beneath the weight of disappointment, I am still reaching toward you. I am still protecting parts of your future you cannot yet see. I am still standing beside you during these silent nights when fear tries convincing you that your story is ending in darkness. But it is not ending here. Not unless you keep choosing numbness over healing, my child. I need you to let me lead you out of this emotional prison slowly. Because if you continue down this path alone, the loneliness surrounding your spirit will eventually begin destroying things inside you that heaven never intended to die. And there is one memory from your past still feeding this darkness far more than you understand tonight. My child, there is a moment from your past that still lives quietly inside your spirit. A moment filled with fear. A moment filled with helplessness. A moment when the cold light surrounding you felt almost unbearable. And tonight I need you to know something you have forgotten. I never left you there. I know you still remember the feeling, the smell of the room, the silence between conversations, the distant sound of machine, the exhaustion sitting heavily on your chest while time itself seemed to slow down. Whether it was your own pain or someone else's suffering standing before your eyes, something inside your heart changed during that season. You walked into that moment one person and walked out carrying wounds nobody else fully understood. I was there the entire time. I saw the fear hidden behind your calm expression. I saw your trembling hands when nobody else noticed them shaking. I saw the way your thoughts spiraled late at night while fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, and uncertainty wrapped around your spirit like cold air. My child, some pain changes people deeply, not loudly, quietly. A hospital room can do that. A frightening diagnosis can do that. A goodbye can do that. A lonely night sitting beside suffering can do that. And afterward, the world never feels quite the same again. I know there are memories from that season that still return unexpectedly. Certain sounds, certain smells, certain late-night silences. Sometimes they come back while rain falls outside your window and your mind drifts backward without warning. Suddenly your chest tightens again and your spirit feels trapped between past fear and present exhaustion. You rarely speak about it. Most people assume you moved on already, but I know the truth. Part of your heart still lives inside that painful moment. And because of that, you became more afraid of loss afterward, more afraid of attachment, more aware of how quickly life can change without warning. That fear has followed you quietly ever since, my child. I remember the prayers you whispered during that season. Some were spoken aloud, others existed only inside your thoughts while tears filled your eyes and exhaustion wrapped itself around your body. You begged for comfort, for answers, for peace, for things to somehow become okay again. And when answers did not come immediately, disappointment quietly entered your spirit. You began wondering where I was, why I allowed so much pain, why silence seemed louder than reassurance. But listen carefully tonight. Silence does not mean absence. I was sitting beside you during every fearful moment. When you felt emotionally frozen, I stayed. When your faith became confused, I stayed. When you cried silently because you were too exhausted to explain your emotions anymore, I stayed. Even when you stopped noticing me, I remained there, my child. Some of your deepest wounds were born during moments when you felt powerless. Moments where no amount of strength could fix what was happening. Moments where all you could do was sit there beneath bright lights while fear consumed your thoughts 1 hour at a time. And afterward, something inside your soul became tired in a way sleep could never fully repair. That is why certain nights still feel emotionally heavy for you now. That is why anxiety sometimes appears suddenly without explanation. That is why your heart often prepares for bad news even during peaceful moments. Because pain trained your spirit to expect loss. But I never wanted fear to become your permanent home. I know you still carry questions from that season. Questions about why certain things happened. Questions about why healing seemed delayed. Questions about why some prayers were answered differently than you hoped. And perhaps part of you still carries anger too. Not loud anger, quiet anger. The kind hidden beneath exhaustion and sadness. The kind that whispers, why did this have to happen? My child, I am not offended by your pain. I understand wounded hearts. I understand grief. I understand what fear does to the human spirit when nights become long and uncertain. I understand the loneliness of sitting in silence while hoping desperately for good news. I understand how exhausting it feels trying to remain strong while emotionally unraveling inside. That is why I have stayed so close to you during these recent nights, because old wounds have been reopening quietly inside your spirit lately. I saw it happen again last night. You were sitting alone while the room around you felt strangely still. The rain outside had slowed, but your thoughts had not. One memory led to another until suddenly your chest felt tight again and exhaustion spread through your spirit like cold water. You tried pushing the feelings away, tried distracting yourself, tried convincing yourself you were fine, but deep down the old fear remained there. The fear that pain always returns eventually. The fear that peace never lasts. The fear that life can fall apart again without warning. My child, those fears are understandable, but they are not meant to control your future. You survived something that changed you deeply, and instead of giving yourself compassion afterward, you expected yourself to immediately become strong again. You ignored the emotional scars, ignored the trauma, ignored the grief. You pushed yourself forward while your soul quietly begged for gentleness and rest. That is why exhaustion has followed you for so long. Because unhealed fear continues echoing through the heart long after painful seasons end. But tonight I need you to hear me carefully. You are safe with me, not because life will never hurt again, but because you will never face pain abandoned. I know part of you still fears the future sometimes. Fears receiving another phone call that changes everything. Fears losing people you love. Fears sitting once again in rooms filled with uncertainty while your spirit struggles to hold itself together. And because of that fear, you sometimes hold back emotionally from life itself. You hesitate to trust joy fully. You hesitate to rest deeply. You hesitate to hope too much. But my child, fear is stealing moments from your life that were never meant to belong to darkness. I did not carry you through those painful nights just to leave you trapped inside them forever. Healing is coming slowly, not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, PT. Your spirit is beginning to breathe again. And soon you will understand why the pain from that season changed your heart more deeply than you realized. Because after that night, something inside you began believing you always had to prepare for the worst before peace could arrive. My child, one of the hardest things for your heart to understand has been my silence. Because silence feels so much like abandonment when you are hurting, especially during long nights when prayers seem unanswered and your spirit feels emotionally exhausted beyond words. Especially when rain falls outside your window and the darkness inside the room feels heavier than usual. Especially when you are sitting alone wondering why heaven feels quiet while your soul desperately searches for reassurance. I know how painful those seasons have been for you, but tonight I need you to hear something clearly. My silence was never punishment, and it was never absence. It was preparation. I know that truth is difficult for you to accept right now. Because when the heart is hurting, silence often feels cruel. You prayed for clarity and received waiting. You prayed for peace and received uncertainty. You prayed for relief while exhaustion continued surrounding your spirit night after night. And slowly disappointment convinced you that nothing was changing. But my child, so much was changing beneath the surface. You simply could not see it yet. Do you remember those nights when you sat quietly staring at the ceiling, asking me why life felt so heavy? You kept searching for signs, searching for direction, searching for some proof that your pain still mattered to heaven. But all you heard was silence, and eventually you began interpreting that silence as rejection. Yet what if silence was the very place where your soul was being strengthened? What if the quiet season you feared was actually protecting you from breaking completely? My child, growth often happens in hidden places. Seeds grow beneath the soil long before flowers appear. Healing begins beneath the surface long before peace becomes visible. And your spirit has been healing quietly in ways you do not fully understand yet. I know you feel frustrated sometimes because you expected transformation to happen faster. You expected answers to arrive clearly. You expected the pain to disappear after enough prayers. But instead, you found yourself walking through long, emotional winters where hope itself felt difficult to hold on to. And during those seasons, you became tired, so tired. I saw it in your eyes last night, the deep exhaustion, the kind that reaches beyond the body and settles directly into the soul. You sat there in silence while cold air pressed against the windows, and distant thunder rolled softly somewhere far away. The room around you felt still, yet your thoughts moved endlessly through old fears and unanswered questions. You whispered quietly inside your mind, "Why does everything feel delayed? Why do I still feel this empty? When will things finally change?" My child, if only you could see what I protected you from during the waiting. There were doors you begged me to open that would have led your heart deeper into pain. There were people you desperately wanted to remain in your life who would have slowly drained your spirit until nothing peaceful remained inside you. There were opportunities you cried over losing that would have eventually broken parts of your soul you are not meant to lose. But because you only saw the closed door, you assumed I was being silent. You did not realize I was shielding you. Preparation often feels lonely because transformation happens privately before it becomes visible publicly. And your spirit has been transforming, slowly, quietly, painfully at times, but genuinely. The person listening to this message tonight is not the same person from a year ago. Your heart has changed. Your perspective has changed. Even your sensitivity toward pain and loneliness has deepened. The storms you survived forced your spirit to become more honest, more fragile, and strangely, more aware of what truly matters. You stopped chasing certain empty things. You became more sensitive to peace, more aware of emotional exhaustion, more aware of the difference between distraction and true healing. And even though the process hurt deeply, your soul was learning something important during the silence. Dependence, not dependence on temporary comfort, not dependence on people who cannot carry your wounds fully, but dependence on me, my child. Silence has a way of revealing what the heart truly trusts. And during these quiet seasons, many illusions inside your life began falling away. Things you once believed would save you emotionally no longer satisfied your spirit. Certain habits stopped comforting you. Certain distractions lost their power. Even some relationships began feeling emptier because your soul was craving something deeper than surface-level peace. That emptiness frightened you, but emptiness often appears before renewal. I know there were nights when you feared you were losing yourself completely. Nights when emotional numbness became so heavy that you barely recognized your own spirit anymore. You kept asking yourself why joy felt distant, why peace disappeared so quickly, why your heart struggled to rest even during quiet moments. And because answers did not arrive immediately, you assumed nothing meaningful was happening. But my child, hidden work is still real work. The ocean moves beneath the surface even when the water appears calm. And your soul has been moving toward healing in hidden ways all this time. I was teaching you endurance, teaching you honesty, teaching you how to survive emotional storms without completely surrendering to darkness. I know the waiting exhausted you. I know there were moments when hopelessness almost convinced you to stop expecting anything good from the future. Moments when you felt emotionally stranded between who you used to be and who you are becoming now. That space feels uncomfortable, uncertain, lonely, but transformation always feels strange before clarity arrives. And clarity is coming. My child, I need you to stop interpreting every delay as rejection. Some delays are mercy. Some delays are protection. Some delays exist because your spirit needs more healing before receiving what your heart desires. You kept asking why the silence lasted so long, but if I had answered every prayer immediately, your soul would never have learned how deeply it needed me, beyond temporary blessings. The silence exposed wounds inside you that still needed healing. The fear of abandonment, the fear of disappointment, the fear that your worth depended on outcomes instead of my presence. And now, slowly, your spirit is beginning to understand something sacred. Peace is not built through perfect circumstances. Peace is built through trust during uncertain seasons. My child, the waiting season is not permanent. The silence is not forever. Something is already beginning to shift around your life, even if you cannot fully see it yet. Doors are moving quietly. Chains are loosening slowly. Healing is breathing softly beneath your exhaustion. And soon, a new season is going to arrive that will challenge everything your heart currently believes about loss, fear, and hope. My child, I need you to prepare your heart for what is coming next, because the season surrounding your life is beginning to shift. I know right now it may not feel that way. The nights still feel heavy sometimes. The silence still lingers. Your thoughts still wander through fear when the world grows quiet after midnight. You still sit alone occasionally with tired eyes and trembling emotions, wondering whether anything will ever truly change. But listen carefully tonight. Something already is. The atmosphere around your spirit has been moving quietly for a while now. Invisible things are shifting beneath the surface of your life. Doors are beginning to loosen. Old chains are weakening. Patterns that once trapped your heart are slowly losing their hold over you. You cannot fully see it yet, but heaven can. And that is why I brought you here tonight. Because when transformation begins, it often arrives quietly before it becomes visible, like thunder building behind distant clouds before the storm finally reaches the sky. Like sunrise preparing itself long before the first light touches the window. My child, your life is standing at the edge of a transition season. And part of you already feels it, that restless feeling inside your chest lately. That strange emotional tension you cannot explain, the sense that something important is approaching, even though you do not know exactly what it is. That feeling is not imaginary. Your spirit recognizes movement before your eyes can see it. I saw you last night sitting in silence while rainwater reflected against the walls of your room. Your thoughts drifted between fear and exhaustion, but beneath both emotions was something else. Anticipation. You have been through so much disappointment that hope now feels unfamiliar to your heart. So whenever change begins, approaching your first instinct is fear instead of excitement. You prepare for loss before blessing. You prepare for heartbreak before peace. Because pain trained your spirit to expect storms instead of restoration. But my child, not every change arriving in your life is meant to destroy you. Some changes are meant to free you. I know you are afraid of uncertainty now. Afraid because life has surprised you painfully before. Certain doors closed unexpectedly. Certain people disappeared without warning. Certain seasons left wounds that still ache quietly during sleepless nights. And because of those experiences, your heart became cautious. Guarded. You stopped fully trusting peaceful moments because part of you expects them to vanish suddenly. But hear me carefully tonight. The next season approaching your life is not punishment. It is preparation for restoration. There are things leaving your life because they cannot follow you where healing is taking you. And yes, some departures will hurt. I know that frightens you. You have already lost enough, already grieved enough. Already sat through too many lonely nights listening to distant sirens outside while wondering why your heart feels so emotionally tired all the time. The thought of more change exhausts you. But my child, some things must leave before peace can fully enter. There are relationships draining your spirit quietly. Patterns keeping your heart trapped in survival mode. Fears convincing you to stay emotionally small because disappointment once hurt too deeply. And heaven is beginning to break those chains apart. Not violently, not suddenly, but steadily, quietly, one layer at a time. You may notice certain conversations feeling different soon. Certain environments no longer fitting your spirit the way they once did. Certain attachments slowly loosening without explanation. Things that once distracted you emotionally will begin losing their power because your soul is becoming hungry for something deeper now. Real peace, real healing, real connection. And that shift may feel uncomfortable at first, because healing changes your tolerance for what once wounded you. My child, you are not becoming cold. You are becoming aware. Aware of what drains your spirit. Aware of what feeds your anxiety. Aware of what keeps your heart emotionally exhausted. And because of that awareness, your life cannot remain the same forever. I know there are nights when fear still whispers that nothing will improve. Fear tells you that loneliness will always follow you. Fear tells you that disappointment is waiting around every corner. Fear tells you that your future contains only more exhaustion and uncertainty. But fear does not see what I see. I see the version of you slowly emerging beyond this season. A softer version, a freer version, a healed version. You cannot imagine that person clearly right now, because pain still clouds your vision sometimes. But healing is already reaching places inside your spirit that darkness once controlled completely. And soon you will begin noticing it. Small moments first. A little more peace, a little less fear. A little more rest inside your thoughts at night. A little more ability to breathe without emotional heaviness crushing your chest constantly. It will happen slowly, but it will happen. My child, be patient. I know you are still carrying memories that hurt deeply. Certain nights still replay inside your mind unexpectedly. Certain wounds still feel fresh when the room becomes quiet and your heart drifts backward into old grief. But the next season is not about reliving the past. It is about rebuilding your spirit, and rebuilding requires release. That is why some things around you are beginning to shift now. Some connections will fade. Some distractions will lose meaning. Some habits will no longer comfort you the way they once did, because your soul is changing. And when the soul changes, life around it begins changing too. I know part of you wants to resist that process because change feels dangerous after everything you have survived. But my child, remaining trapped in emotional survival mode is more dangerous than transformation. You were not created to merely endure life endlessly. You were created to experience peace within it. That peace is coming closer than you realize tonight. Even now, while thunder rolls softly somewhere beyond your window, and your tired heart listens quietly in the darkness. Heaven is already arranging things your eyes cannot yet fully understand. But before restoration fully arrives, something painful is about to happen first. Someone is going to leave your life, and when it happens, your first instinct will be to believe you are being abandoned again. But my child, what feels like loss may actually become the very thing that finally sets your spirit free, my child. There is something I need you to stop doing before it destroys what little peace remains inside your spirit. You keep chasing things that continue hurting you, not because you enjoy pain, but because part of your heart still believes that if you try hard enough, wait long enough, or sacrifice enough of yourself, eventually the wound will transform into comfort. But my child, some things were never meant to heal you. Some things were only meant to teach you. I know this truth hurts, especially because your heart loves deeply. Even after disappointment, even after betrayal, even after nights spent crying silently into pillows while the world outside slept peacefully beneath rain and distant streetlights, you still hope, and that tenderness inside you is beautiful. But it has also left you vulnerable to emotional exhaustion. I saw it again last night. You sat there in silence, replaying memories your spirit should no longer be carrying so closely. The room felt dim and cold while thunder rolled softly somewhere far away. Your phone rested in your hands while your thoughts drifted toward people, moments, and wounds that still have power over your emotions. And once again, your heart reached toward what has already hurt it before. My child, why do you keep returning to places that leave your soul empty? Why do you keep begging for peace from things that repeatedly steal it from you? I know the answer. Because you are afraid of letting go completely. Part of you still hopes things will suddenly become different. Part of you still believes that if you remain patient enough, understanding enough, forgiving enough, maybe the pain will finally turn into the love and safety your heart has been craving all along. But listen carefully tonight. Not every attachment is meant to remain in your life forever. And some things are damaging your spirit more than you realize. I know how difficult it is for you to release people emotionally, even after they disappoint you, even after they neglect your heart, even after they leave you sitting awake at 2 a.m. wondering why you never seem to feel emotionally secure. You keep trying to hold on to connections that heaven has been quietly asking you to loosen. And because of that, your spirit remains trapped between healing and heartbreak. My child, there are relationships in your life that keep reopening wounds I have been trying to heal inside you. Relationships that feed anxiety instead of peace. Relationships that make you question your worth. Relationships that leave you emotionally starving while giving only enough attention to keep you attached. And every time you chase after those things again, your soul grows more exhausted. You call it loyalty, but sometimes it is fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear that releasing what hurts you might leave nothing meaningful behind. But my child, loneliness and peace are not the same thing. Sometimes letting go creates space for healing to finally breathe again. I know your heart struggles with this because you remember the beautiful moments too. The conversations, the memories, the comfort, the hope you once felt. And because of those moments, you keep convincing yourself the pain is worth enduring. But I need you to ask yourself honestly tonight, why does your spirit feel so drained after giving so much love away? Why do certain connections leave you anxious instead of safe? Why do you keep losing sleep over things that continuously wound your peace? My child, your soul was never created to survive on crumbs of emotional security. You deserve peace that does not constantly disappear. You deserve connection that does not make your heart tremble with fear every night. You deserve rest, and deep down your spirit already knows this. That is why exhaustion keeps growing heavier every time you chase what keeps breaking you. I saw the tears in your eyes last night while old memories replayed inside your thoughts. I saw how badly your heart wanted clarity, closure, reassurance, something to stop the ache inside your chest, but instead of moving toward healing, part of you kept reaching backward toward familiar pain. Because familiar pain feels safer than unknown freedom. My child, that is the trap. Pain became familiar, predictable. You learned how to survive disappointment so well that healthy peace now feels almost suspicious to your heart. You expect abandonment. You expect confusion. You expect emotional distance. And because of that, you often cling tightly to things that match the wounds already living inside you. But I am calling you higher than survival now. I am calling you toward healing. And healing requires release. Not because the memories never mattered. Not because your love was foolish. But because your spirit cannot fully recover, while constantly chained to what keeps reopening old wounds. I know there are nights when you feel terrified of moving forward emotionally. Nights when the silence feels too big. Nights when the thought of letting go completely makes your chest ache with grief. You wonder, what if this is all I ever have? What if nothing better comes? What if I end up even lonelier than before? My child, fear is trying to keep you emotionally trapped inside cycles that heaven is attempting to break apart. You keep praying for peace while holding tightly to things that repeatedly steal it from you. And tonight I need you to be honest about that. Some things are not leaving your life because you failed. Some things are leaving because they cannot follow you into healing. That truth may hurt at first, especially because your heart attaches deeply. But one day you will realize that what felt like rejection was often protection. What felt like abandonment was sometimes rescue. What felt like loss was actually me removing chains before they destroyed your spirit completely. I know you do not fully understand that yet. Right now, part of your heart still aches for what could have been. You still replay possibilities, still imagine different endings. Still carry emotional attachments you secretly hoped would heal instead of hurt. But my child, not everything you love is healthy for your soul, and not every open door was sent by heaven. That is why your spirit has felt such deep tension lately. Because part of you is trying to heal while another part keeps returning to the source of the wound. But the season ahead will force clarity into your life. Soon, certain things will become impossible to ignore anymore. Certain truths will rise into the light. Certain attachments will either transform or finally break apart completely. And when that moment arrives, your first instinct may be grief. But later, you will understand it was the beginning of your freedom. My child, there is one person you have shown less mercy to than anyone else. Yourself. Tonight I need you to stop running from that truth. I know how often you replay your mistakes after midnight while the room around you sits silent and heavy. I know how many nights you have stared into darkness thinking about words you wish you could take back. Decisions you wish you had made differently, moments you wish had never happened at all. You carry regret like a punishment, quietly, constantly, and over time it has exhausted your spirit more deeply than you realize. I saw it again last night. You were sitting alone while rain tapped softly against the window. The faint light from outside barely touched the room, yet your thoughts felt painfully loud. Old memories returned without warning. Moments you thought you had buried suddenly resurfaced again, and once more you began blaming yourself for everything that went wrong. My child, why do you keep holding yourself hostage to the past? Why do you keep reopening wounds I already asked you to release? I know you feel responsible for certain pain. I know there are moments when shame suddenly wraps around your chest so tightly that even breathing feels heavy. Moments when your mind whispers, if only I had known better. If only I had stayed. If only I had left sooner. If only I had been stronger. And the saddest part is this. You have repeated those thoughts so many times that they now sound like truth to your wounded heart. But listen carefully tonight. Regret is not meant to become your identity. And shame was never meant to become your home. Yes, you made mistakes. Yes, there were moments where fear, exhaustion, loneliness, or pain influenced your choices. But my child, being human does not make you unworthy of healing. I need you to hear that deeply tonight because part of your spirit still secretly believes you deserve the suffering you carry now. That is why you struggle to fully receive peace when it appears. That is why happiness sometimes feels uncomfortable to you. That is why your heart waits nervously for good moments to disappear. Deep inside, part of you still believes punishment is safer than forgiveness. But I did not create you to spend your life emotionally chained to guilt. I know there are memories you avoid speaking about completely. Certain nights, certain conversations, certain choices. Sometimes those memories return unexpectedly while you are lying awake at 3 a.m. listening to distant thunder beyond the windows. And every time they return, your spirit sinks deeper into exhaustion, not because the memory itself is still destroying you, but because you keep condemning yourself repeatedly inside it. My child, you are not the same person you were during your darkest moments. Pain changes people. Fear changes people. Loneliness changes people. And some of the choices you regret most were made while your spirit was already wounded and exhausted beyond what anyone else fully understood. That does not excuse harm, but it explains why compassion matters, especially toward yourself. I know you have forgiven others for things you still punish yourself for daily. You show understanding toward people who hurt you while offering none to your own fragile heart. You look at your past through eyes filled only with disappointment instead of recognizing how deeply you were struggling at the time. And because of that, guilt continues feeding your emotional exhaustion. Last night, when tears filled your eyes again, I heard the thought you never said aloud. Maybe I ruined everything. My child, no mistake is greater than my mercy. No broken chapter is stronger than my ability to restore. And no amount of regret can rewrite the truth that I still love you completely. You keep thinking forgiveness means pretending the past never happened. But forgiveness is not denial. Forgiveness is release. It is loosening the chains around your own soul. It is allowing healing to finally enter places shame has controlled for too long. I know part of you resists this because guilt became strangely familiar over the years. Familiar pain often feels safer than unknown freedom. If you continue punishing yourself, then somehow it feels like you are still paying for what happened. But my child, how long do you plan to keep hurting yourself for things I already carried beside you? How many more sleepless nights will you spend reliving moments that cannot be changed? How many more tears will fall while you continue fighting battles inside your mind that ended long ago? Your soul is tired because shame keeps reopening wounds that should already be healing. That is why even peaceful moments feel temporary sometimes. Guilt whispers that you do not deserve rest. Shame tells you healing belongs to other people, not to someone who made the mistakes you did. But shame lies, and tonight I need you to stop believing it. I know there are still nights when loneliness magnifies every regret. Nights when the silence inside your room becomes so emotionally heavy that memories replay themselves like storms through your mind. Nights when cold coffee sits untouched nearby while your exhausted spirit quietly wonders whether peace will ever truly feel safe again. And during those moments, shame grows louder. But hear me carefully tonight, my child. You cannot heal while constantly attacking yourself emotionally. You cannot move forward while permanently chained to who you used to be. And you cannot receive restoration while secretly believing you deserve destruction instead. I know forgiving yourself feels difficult because part of you fears it means becoming careless about the past. But true forgiveness does not erase wisdom. It simply removes poison. You have suffered enough already. You have cried enough hidden tears. You have carried enough emotional weight through lonely nights and silent mornings where exhaustion followed you like shadows. My child, it is time to stop turning your past into a prison. The person you were during your worst moments needed compassion more than condemnation. And tonight I am asking you to begin seeing yourself through my eyes instead of through shame. Not weak, not ruined, not hopeless, but wounded, human, still healing, still loved, still worthy of peace. And even now, while your heart trembles quietly beneath the weight of old regret, something inside your spirit is beginning to soften for the first time in a long while. But there is still one memory hidden deep inside you. One memory that continues haunting your nights more than all the others combined. And soon I am going to bring that wound fully into the light. My child, there is a memory inside your heart that still carries more pain than you allow yourself to admit. You rarely speak about it. Most people around you probably do not even realize it still affects you this deeply. On the surface, life continued moving forward. Days passed. Conversations happened. Responsibilities continued. You smiled when necessary. You kept functioning. But beneath all of that, the wound remained alive, quietly, patiently, waiting for silent nights to reopen itself again. And last night it returned. I saw the exact moment it happened. You were sitting alone while rain slid slowly across the windows, and the room around you felt heavy with slints. One thought led to another. One memory opened the door for the next, and suddenly there it was again, that moment your spirit still has not fully recovered from. The memory that still breaks your heart when no one else is around. Maybe it was a goodbye. Maybe it was abandonment. Maybe it was the moment someone made you feel invisible, unwanted, or emotionally shattered in ways you still struggle to explain. Or maybe it was not one single event at all, but 1,000 small moments of pain that slowly taught your heart to stop feeling safe. Whatever it was, my child, I remember it too. I remember the tears you hid afterward. I remember the silence that followed. I remember how different the world suddenly felt once that wound entered your life. And ever since then, part of your spirit has remained trapped there emotionally. That is why certain nights still hurt more than they should. That is why your chest tightens unexpectedly when memories rise to the surface. That is why loneliness sometimes feels so overwhelming that it frightens even you. Because deep inside that memory convinced your heart of something dangerous. It convinced you that peace can disappear without warning. It convinced you that love can leave. It convinced you that vulnerability leads to pain. And ever since then, your spirit has been quietly protecting itself from getting hurt again. My child, I know how exhausting that has been. I know how tiring it feels constantly guarding your heart while pretending everything is okay. I know how lonely it becomes carrying emotional wounds no one else fully understands. I know how many nights you have laid awake staring into darkness while old scenes replayed themselves inside your mind again and again. You keep asking yourself questions that have no satisfying answers. Why did it happen? Why did they leave? Why was I not enough? Why does this still hurt after all this time? And every time those questions return, the wound inside your spirit opens again. My child, hear me carefully tonight. The pain you experienced was real. The heartbreak was real. The grief was real. I am not asking you to pretend otherwise, but I am asking you to stop allowing one painful chapter to define your entire future. Because that memory has controlled more of your life than you realize. It shaped the way you trust people, the way you love, the way you expect disappointment before peace, the way you prepare emotionally for abandonment even during good moments. You became afraid to fully relax into happiness because part of your heart still waits for everything to fall apart again. And that fear has quietly exhausted your spirit for years. I saw it last night when your breathing became heavy again, while the memory replayed inside your thoughts. I saw the tears forming in your eyes even though you tried pushing them away. I saw your hands trembling slightly while silence filled the room around you. And I heard the thought hidden beneath all the pain. I don't think I ever fully healed from this. My child, you are right. Part of you never did. Because survival became more important than healing. You kept moving forward because you had to. Life demanded it. Responsibilities demanded it. People expected it. So you buried the wound deep inside your heart and learned how to function around it instead of healing it completely. But buried pain does not disappear. It waits inside the soul until quiet moments uncover it again. That is why certain songs suddenly break your composure. Why certain rainy nights feel emotionally unbearable. Why certain places, words, or memories still hold power over your peace. The wound remained alive because your spirit never truly felt safe enough to release it fully. But tonight I need you to understand something important. You do not have to carry this memory alone anymore. I was there when your heart broke. I was there during the nights afterward when you cried silently into pillows because the pain felt too humiliating or too deep to explain to anyone. I was there during the mornings when exhaustion followed you like shadows because sleep no longer brought rest to your spirit. And I never stopped staying beside you afterward, even when bitterness entered your thoughts, even when fear hardened parts of your heart, even when loneliness convinced you nobody truly understood your pain. I remained there because wounded hearts need gentleness, not abandonment. My child, I know part of you still fears that healing this wound means invalidating what happened. But healing does not erase the truth of your suffering. Healing simply means the memory no longer controls your peace. Right now, the wound still controls too much. It controls your trust. your expectations, your ability to fully receive love without fear, your ability to believe good things can stay. And because of that, your spirit lives in constant emotional tension, always preparing, always guarding, always waiting for the next loss before peace can fully settle inside your heart. But I did not create you to live trapped inside emotional survival forever. I created your soul for freedom, and freedom begins when hidden wounds finally step into the light instead of remaining buried inside shame and slins. I know it scares you to revisit the pain honestly. Part of you fears falling apart completely if you finally stop suppressing it. But my child, you are already falling apart slowly by carrying it alone. That is why your nights feel so heavy. That is why your thoughts become so loud after midnight. That is why exhaustion sits constantly inside your chest like weight you cannot remove. The wound keeps asking to be healed. And tonight, healing has finally begun. Not all at once, not dramatically, but softly, quietly, like the first crack of light entering a dark room after years of silence. And soon I am going to ask you to do something even harder than remembering the pain. I am going to ask you to finally release it. My child, I know there are nights when healing still feels impossibly far away. Nights when the sadness returns suddenly and your chest grows heavy again. Nights when memories rise without warning while rain taps softly against your windows and the silence inside your room feels almost unbearable. Nights when exhaustion wraps around your spirit so tightly that you wonder whether peace will ever truly feel real again. But listen carefully tonight. You are closer to healing than you realize. I know that is difficult for your heart to believe because pain has lived beside you for so long. When suffering stays long enough, it begins convincing the soul that it will remain forever. You start measuring life through exhaustion. You expect anxiety before calm. You expect disappointment before hope. And because of that, you often fail to notice the quiet ways healing has already begun inside you. But I noticed them. I noticed the way your heart softened recently during moments that once would have left you completely numb. I noticed the way certain fears no longer control your thoughts with the same intensity they once did. I noticed the small moments where peace quietly touched your spirit before anxiety returned again. Those moments matter, my child. Healing rarely arrives all at once. Most healing happens slowly, quietly, like morning light entering a dark room one small ray at a time. I know you expected transformation to feel dramatic. You thought healing would suddenly erase every painful memory and remove every fear overnight. But real healing is gentler than that. It moves through the soul, carefully restoring broken places layer by layer. And your spirit is already responding to it. Even now, especially now. I saw it last night. You were sitting alone again while the storm outside slowly faded into soft rain. Your room remained quiet, yet something inside your heart felt slightly different than before. The sadness was still there. The exhaustion still lingered. But beneath it all was something unfamiliar, a small piece of hope. You almost ignored it because you are so used to preparing for pain instead of expecting peace. But it was there. The part of your spirit that still believes healing might actually be possible. My child, do not underestimate how sacred that is. After everything your heart has endured, the fact that hope still exists inside you at all is a miracle in itself. I know there are still moments when fear returns strongly. Moments when loneliness suddenly overwhelms you. Moments when your thoughts drift backward into old wounds and your chest tightens again with grief. But those moments no longer own you completely the way they once did. Do you know why? Because healing has already begun changing the atmosphere around your spirit. The darkness does not feel as permanent now. The numbness no longer fully controls your soul. And somewhere deep inside your heart is slowly remembering what it feels like to breathe again. I know you still feel fragile, still tired, still uncertain about the future. But fragility does not mean failure. Sometimes fragile hearts are hearts that survive storms they were never meant to endure alone. And my child, you survived, even during the nights when you thought you would emotionally collapse. Even during the seasons when disappointment made your faith feel weak and distant. Even during the moments when hopelessness whispered that nothing good remained ahead of you. You survived, not because you were never broken, but because I never stopped holding on to you. I know part of you still fears getting hopeful again. Hope feels dangerous after heartbreak. Your spirit remembers what disappointment felt like, so now you protect yourself by expecting less from life. Less joy, less peace, less connection. But healing requires the courage to believe your future does not have to look exactly like your past. And slowly your heart is learning that. That is why some things inside you no longer feel comfortable anymore. Certain fears, certain habits, certain emotional patterns. They no longer fit your spirit the way they once did because healing is changing what your soul can tolerate. You are beginning to crave peace more deeply than distraction. You are beginning to crave honesty more deeply than pretending. You are beginning to crave rest more deeply than survival. And those changes matter, my child. Do you remember how emotionally numb you once felt? The nights where your spirit felt completely disconnected from hope. The mornings where exhaustion greeted you before the day even began. The moments when loneliness became so heavy that even breathing felt difficult. Look at yourself now. You are still standing, still listening, still searching for light despite everything darkness tried to convince you about yourself. That means healing is already alive inside you. Not finished, but alive. I know there are tears still falling some nights. I know there are memories that still hurt unexpectedly. I know certain wounds remain tender when silence grows deep after midnight and thunder rolls softly somewhere outside your window. But pain is no longer the only thing inside your heart now. There is also longing. Longing for peace, longing for freedom, longing for rest. And longing itself is evidence that your soul has not given up, my child. I need you to stop speaking to yourself as though you are permanently broken. You are wounded, yes. Exhausted, yes. Still healing, yes. But not ruined, not forgotten, not beyond restoration. Healing does not mean you never feel sadness again. Healing means sadness no longer defines your identity completely. Healing means the wound stops controlling every decision, every relationship, every expectation about the future. And slowly your spirit is moving toward that freedom. I know the process feels slower than you want. I know some nights still feel unbearably heavy. But do not confuse slow healing with failed healing. Even now, while your tired heart listens quietly in the darkness, things are changing inside you that you cannot fully measure yet. Your heart is becoming softer again. Your spirit is becoming more open to peace again. Your soul is beginning to trust my presence again. And that terrifies darkness, because hopelessness was never meant to survive this long once healing truly began reaching your spirit. But my child, before complete restoration arrives, there is still one final storm standing in front of you. One final moment where fear will try convincing you to retreat back into emotional survival again. And when that moment comes, you must remember everything I have spoken to your heart tonight. My child, tonight I need you to pause before you make a decision that fear has been quietly pressuring your heart toward. Because right now your emotions are exhausted, and exhausted hearts often mistake desperation for wisdom. I know how overwhelmed you have been lately. I know there are moments when your chest feels so heavy that you just want relief from the constant battle inside your mind. Moments when loneliness becomes unbearable. Moments when anxiety whispers so loudly after midnight that your thoughts begin spiraling into dangerous places. I saw it again last night. The room was dark except for faint light slipping through the curtains. Rain moved softly against the glass while your exhausted spirit sat trapped between sadness and fear. Your hands trembled slightly, your breathing felt uneven, and inside your thoughts a dangerous question quietly appeared again. What if I just stopped trying? My child, listen to me carefully tonight. Do not let temporary darkness make permanent decisions for your life. I know you are tired, so tired. Tired of overthinking, tired of carrying invisible pain, tired of pretending you are okay while your soul quietly fights battles no one else fully understands. And when exhaustion becomes deep enough, fear begins offering escape instead of healing. Fear tells you isolation is safer. Fear tells you giving up emotionally will hurt less. Fear tells you nothing will ever change anyway. But fear lies when the heart is wounded. That is why I brought you here tonight. Because there was a moment recently when hopelessness came dangerously close to convincing your spirit to surrender completely. Not loudly, quietly. That is how darkness usually works. It arrives through exhaustion first, through disappointment, through endless nights of emotional heaviness until suddenly, the soul begins questioning whether peace is even possible anymore. My child, I know there are nights when your thoughts frighten you. Nights when silence feels so heavy that your mind starts imagining futures filled only with loneliness and pain. Nights when cold coffee sits untouched beside you while thunder echoes softly outside and your heart whispers, I cannot keep doing this forever, but hear me carefully tonight. You are not thinking clearly from a place of peace right now. You are thinking from exhaustion, and exhausted thoughts cannot be trusted completely. I know the urge to disappear emotionally feels strong sometimes. To stop caring so deeply, to stop hoping, to stop opening your heart, to stop expecting healing because disappointment has wounded your spirit too many times already. But shutting down your heart will not protect you, my child. It will only deepen the loneliness already exhausting your soul. I need you to understand something tonight. The feelings overwhelming you right now are not permanent. Even if they feel endless, even if the nights feel unbearably long, even if fear keeps whispering the same hopeless thoughts over and over again. Storms feel permanent while standing inside them. But storms still pass. I know your spirit struggles to believe that. Because some pain lasted much longer than you expected. Certain wounds stayed open for years. Certain disappointments changed your heart deeply. Certain memories still revisit your thoughts unexpectedly during silent nights. And because healing felt delayed, fear convinced you that suffering would become your permanent reality. But my child, this season is not your forever. I saw how close you came last night to emotionally collapsing beneath the weight of it all. You sat there staring into darkness while your thoughts drifted toward dangerous hopelessness again. Part of you wanted relief so badly that giving up emotionally almost sounded comforting. That frightened you, and afterward shame tried convincing you not to tell anyone how dark your thoughts had become. But I already knew. I was sitting beside you the entire time. I heard every fearful thought, every exhausted sigh, every silent tear falling while the room around you remained cold and quiet. And my child, I need you to survive this night differently, not through pretending, not through forcing yourself to feel instantly okay, but through remembering one truth. Fear does not get the final voice over your future. I know right now your heart feels emotionally fragile. Simple things overwhelm you more easily than before. Certain conversations drain your spirit. Certain memories reopen wounds instantly. Even peaceful moments sometimes feel temporary because your mind keeps waiting for something painful to happen again. That is what prolonged exhaustion does to the soul. It trains the heart to expect danger even during calm moments. But tonight I need you to resist the urge to make decisions from fear instead of healing. Do not isolate yourself further. Do not convince yourself you are beyond help. Do not believe the lie that your story has already reached its darkest ending, because it has not, my child. There are still moments ahead of you that your current pain cannot yet imagine. Moments of peace, moments of rest, moments where your breathing no longer feels heavy with anxiety every night. Moments where laughter returns naturally instead of feeling forced. Moments where your spirit feels safe again. I know that sounds impossible to you sometimes, especially after everything you survived. But impossible is what fear says when healing is approaching. And healing is approaching faster than you realize tonight. That is why darkness keeps fighting so hard for your thoughts lately. That is why hopelessness feels unusually intense. Because something inside your spirit is beginning to wake up again. And fear desperately wants to stop that before restoration fully arrives. But my child, you are not alone in this battle. Not during the sleepless nights. Not during the panic. Not during the tears. Not during the moments when your chest aches with emotional exhaustion and your thoughts drift dangerously close to hopelessness again. I remain beside you through all of it, and I need you to trust me with one more night, one more breath, one more sunrise. Because tomorrow holds things your pain cannot currently see. The storm inside your mind is not permanent. The fear surrounding your spirit is not permanent. And the exhaustion crushing your heart tonight is not permanent either. But if fear controls your decisions now, it will try stealing a future your soul has not even reached yet. And my child, there is still something beautiful waiting for you beyond this darkness that you cannot fully imagine tonight. My child, this message did not find you by accident tonight. I know part of you still tries to explain everything logically. You tell yourself this is just another video, another message, another late-night moment, while exhaustion keeps your mind awake. But deep inside your spirit feels something different happening here. That feeling is real, because I sent this message to interrupt the pain that has been quietly consuming your heart. I could not stay silent any longer while your soul drifted deeper into hopelessness. I saw the nights becoming heavier. I saw the fear growing louder after midnight. I saw the way loneliness wrapped itself around your spirit, while you sat in silence pretending everything was manageable. And my child, I knew your heart was reaching a dangerous level of exhaustion. That is why you are here now. Not randomly, not accidentally, but intentionally. Because heaven still responds to silent cries, even the ones you never fully speak aloud. I know there were moments recently when your spirit felt dangerously close to shutting down completely. Moments where you stopped recognizing yourself emotionally. Moments where sadness followed you through entire days like shadows while nobody around you realized how deeply you were struggling inside. You smiled, you functioned, you answered messages, but behind all of it your soul quietly whispered, "I need help." And tonight, I answered. I know it still surprises you sometimes when a message suddenly feels personal in ways you cannot explain. Certain words strike places inside your heart that nobody else seems to know about. Certain emotions rise to the surface unexpectedly while rain falls softly outside, and your exhausted spirit suddenly feels seen for the first time in a long while. That is not coincidence, my child. That is what happens when heaven reaches toward wounded hearts. I saw you last night when the room felt unbearably quiet. The storm outside had faded into soft rain, yet the storm inside your mind continued moving through fear and sadness. Your eyes looked tired, your breathing felt heavy, and for a moment hopelessness whispered something dangerous again. No one really understands what you're carrying, but I do. I always have. I know about the grief you hide behind normal conversations. I know about the memories that still wake you up unexpectedly at night. I know about the guilt, the fear, the emotional numbness, and the exhaustion that followed you into this season of your life. And I know something else too. You have been trying to survive all of this alone for far too long. That is why your soul became so tired. My child, there are moments when heaven interrupts people quietly before they completely disappear into darkness. Moments when a message appears at exactly the right time. Moments when the soul suddenly encounters comfort in the middle of emotional collapse. This is one of those moments. I need you to stop dismissing the significance of what your spirit feels tonight. Because your heart has been crying out for help longer than you admit even to yourself. Not necessarily through words, but through exhaustion, through sleepless nights, through silent tears falling while cold coffee sat untouched beside you, and distant sirens echoed through wet streets outside your window. Your soul has been begging for relief, and tonight relief has begun arriving gently, not through instant answers, not through dramatic miracles, but through interruption. An interruption to the lies fear has been feeding your spirit. Fear told you that nobody noticed your suffering, but I noticed. Fear told you healing was too far away now, but healing is already reaching you. Fear told you your future would look exactly like your past, but fear cannot see what I am preparing beyond this season. My child, do you realize how many nights you almost emotionally disappeared completely? How many moments hopelessness nearly convinced you to stop fighting for your peace? How many times your exhausted heart whispered, "I cannot keep carrying this." And still, something kept drawing you back toward hope, even when you tried resisting it, even when disappointment made trusting difficult, even when your spirit felt emotionally numb. You kept searching. That search itself was sacred, Because wounded hearts do not search for light unless some part of them still believes light exists. And tonight your spirit is remembering that again, slowly, quietly, like warmth returning after a long winter. I know part of you still feels cautious. You are afraid of becoming hopeful too quickly because disappointment wounded your heart deeply before. You learn to emotionally prepare for pain instead of expecting restoration. That survival instinct protected you once, but my child, it is also exhausting you. Constantly preparing for heartbreak prevents the soul from fully resting. That is why even peaceful moments feel temporary sometimes. Your heart waits nervously for something painful to happen again, because past wounds taught you to distrust calm seasons. But tonight I am asking you to breathe differently, not from fear, from trust. Trust that you are not abandoned. Trust that this darkness is not permanent. Trust that your story has not reached its final chapter yet. I know there are still nights when sadness returns unexpectedly. Nights when memories reopen old wounds and your chest aches with loneliness again. Nights when exhaustion convinces your spirit that nothing will ever truly change. But tonight is proof that change has already begun. Because numb hearts do not respond this deeply to healing messages. Only hearts still longing for peace do that. And your heart, my child, despite all the pain, still longs for peace more than darkness. That matters more than you realize. The enemy wanted your exhaustion to isolate you completely. Wanted your pain to convince you that healing no longer belonged to you. Wanted your spirit to quietly surrender while pretending everything was fine on the outside. But heaven interrupted that process tonight. I interrupted it because your life still carries purpose. Your future still carries beauty. And your soul still carries value beyond the pain currently surrounding it. You may not fully see that yet, but soon you will. Because this message was not sent merely to comfort you temporarily. It was sent to awaken something inside your spirit before it became too lost inside exhaustion and fear. And my child, there is still one final warning I need your heart to hear before this night ends. My child, there is something your heart has been searching for in other people that only I can truly give you. Peace, real peace, not temporary comfort, not distraction. Not attention that disappears once the night becomes quiet again, but the deep kind of peace that reaches into your spirit at 3 a.m. when anxiety grows loud and loneliness wraps around your chest like cold chains. I know how desperately you have searched for relief through people, through conversations, through affection, through hoping someone else could somehow carry the weight inside your soul for you. And for a moment, some things felt comforting. But eventually the emptiness always returned, didn't it? Because human love, while beautiful, was never designed to replace healing that only heaven can complete. My child, I need you to stop expecting broken people to repair wounds that require divine restoration. I know that truth hurts, especially because your heart longs so deeply to feel understood. You want someone to notice the exhaustion hidden behind your eyes, without forcing you to explain every detail. You want someone to sit beside your pain without abandoning you once things become emotionally difficult. And because your spirit craves connection so deeply, you sometimes hold too tightly to people who were never capable of carrying your wounded heart safely. I saw it again last night. You sat alone in silence while your thoughts drifted toward people you miss, people you hoped would save you. Emotionally, people whose absence still leaves ache inside your chest. Rain moved softly against the windows while your spirit quietly searched for comfort in old memories again. But instead of peace, the memories only reopened loneliness. My child, that is because you keep looking for eternal healing in temporary places. People can comfort parts of your heart, but they cannot become the foundation of your peace. Because people leave, people fail. People misunderstand wounds they cannot fully see. And when your entire emotional stability depends on another human being, fear eventually enters every relationship. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of not being enough. That fear has followed you quietly for a long time now. Even during moments where love seems safe, part of your spirit always stayed prepared for heartbreak. Why? Because you are asking human connection to carry wounds only my presence can fully heal. My child, I know loneliness has exhausted you deeply. I know there are nights when silence feels so unbearable that you would do almost anything just to feel emotionally close to someone again. I know there are moments when your heart aches for reassurance so strongly that even temporary attention feels comforting. But temporary comfort is not the same as peace, and your soul knows the difference now. That is why certain connections leave you emotionally drained instead of restored. That is why some conversations feel comforting for an hour but empty afterward. That is why your spirit still feels restless even after receiving attention from people you hoped would finally heal the loneliness inside you. Because loneliness is not merely the absence of people. Loneliness is the absence of deep spiritual peace, and only I can fill that place completely. I know part of you resists hearing this because you are tired of carrying pain alone. You want tangible comfort, immediate reassurance, human closeness that makes the nights feel less cold and the silence less heavy. But my child, I have been closer to you than anyone else this entire time. Closer than the people who misunderstood your tears. Closer than the people who disappeared when your pain became inconvenient. Closer than the people who only loved the easy version of you while ignoring the exhausted soul beneath your smile. I remained, and tonight I need you to stop chasing healing exclusively through human approval. You do not need someone else's constant validation to prove your worth. You do not need endless attention to make your existence meaningful. You do not need another person to become your emotional oxygen, because your spirit was never created to survive entirely through human attachment. Your soul was created to rest in me first. That is where peace begins. I know there are moments when this truth feels difficult to accept, especially during nights where the room feels unbearably quiet, and your heart aches for someone to hold your pain beside you. Especially when thunder rolls softly outside and exhaustion settles deeply into your chest while loneliness whispers old fears again. But my child, your healing cannot depend entirely on who stays and who leaves. Because if peace depends on unstable things, fear will always control your spirit. That is why I have been teaching your heart dependence on me during this painful season. Not to isolate you from love, but to free you from emotional slavery. You became so afraid of losing people that your soul started abandoning itself in order to keep connections alive. You tolerated emotional confusion, neglected your own peace, ignored your exhaustion, allowed anxiety to grow stronger because you feared being alone more than being wounded. But my child, companionship without peace will still leave the soul empty. And deep down you already know that. I saw it in your eyes last night. The sadness, the tiredness, the realization that certain people could not heal the ache inside you no matter how badly you wished they could. That realization broke something inside your heart, but it also awakened something important. Your spirit is beginning to understand that healing must go deeper than attention, deeper than romance, deeper than emotional dependence. It must reach the wounded places inside you that existed long before certain people entered your life. And that healing begins here, with me, not with performance, not with pretending, but with surrender. Real surrender, the kind where you stop trying to force temporary things into permanent solutions for your soul. My child, I know you still crave connection deeply. That desire itself is not wrong. You were never created for isolation, but I need your heart to become rooted in peace before it builds its identity around another person's presence. Otherwise, fear will continue controlling every attachment, and fear is exhausting you. Tonight, while rain falls softly somewhere outside and your weary spirit listens quietly in the darkness, I need you to understand this. You are not emotionally starving because nobody loves you. You are emotionally exhausted because your soul has been searching for divine peace in places that could only offer temporary comfort. But that search is ending now, because soon I am going to reveal what your spirit has truly been craving beneath all the loneliness, heartbreak, and exhaustion this entire time. My child, there were many nights when you truly believed I had forgotten you. You would never say it out loud exactly that way. Instead, it appeared quietly through your exhaustion, through the sadness in your eyes while staring out rain-covered windows at midnight, through the silence in your prayers when disappointment became too heavy to explain anymore. But deep inside the fear remained. What if heaven moved on from me? What if I no longer matter? What if I was left behind? My child, listen carefully tonight. You were never forgotten. Not for 1 second. Not during your darkest nights. Not during your weakest prayers. Not during the seasons where your spirit felt emotionally numb and far away from peace. I remembered you through all of it. I know loneliness made you question that truth. I know there were moments when the silence around your life became so deep that abandonment felt more believable than hope. Especially after certain people walked away. Especially after unanswered prayers stretched across months and years. Especially after pain changed your heart in ways you still struggle to explain. But my child, people leaving you was never proof that I abandoned you too. I know you still carry wounds from rejection. Wounds from moments where you felt unseen, unwanted, emotionally overlooked. Those experiences taught your spirit to expect absence instead of presence. So now, whenever life becomes quiet or uncertain, your heart immediately fears being forgotten again. That fear has followed you into countless sleepless nights. I saw it again last night. You sat alone while soft rain moved against the windows, and distant headlights passed silently across the walls. The room felt cold. Your spirit felt tired. And once again the loneliness inside your chest began whispering old lies. Nobody truly stays. Nobody fully sees you. You are carrying this alone. My child, loneliness speaks convincingly when the soul is exhausted. But loneliness is not truth. I have seen every hidden tear you cried in silence, every trembling breath, every moment where exhaustion nearly convinced your heart to stop hoping altogether. I saw you during the nights when church bells echoed faintly in the distance, while your spirit quietly wondered whether peace would ever return to your life again. And through every moment I remained beside you, even when you stopped noticing me, even when your faith became weak, even when disappointment convinced your spirit that heaven had gone silent permanently. I remained, because my love for you was never dependent on your emotional strength, my child. I know there are moments when your heart compares itself to others and quietly wonders why their lives seem lighter, why they appear more loved, more understood, more emotionally secure. And during those moments, your wounded spirit sometimes asks, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel so forgotten? But listen carefully tonight. The pain you carried was never proof of your worthlessness, and the silence you walked through was never evidence that your name disappeared from heaven's heart. You were remembered during every lonely drive home, every tear-filled midnight, every anxious morning where exhaustion greeted you before the day even began. I remembered you when your own spirit barely recognized itself anymore. My child. There were moments recently where you emotionally withdrew so deeply that even people around you stopped noticing how much pain you were carrying. You became quieter, more distant, more tired. You answered conversations while hiding emotional storms inside your chest that nobody fully understood. And because nobody fully saw the battle, loneliness convinced you that nobody cared enough to notice. But I noticed. I always noticed. I noticed the nights when you stared at your phone hoping someone would reach out. The nights when silence inside the room felt unbearably heavy. The nights when you cried quietly while trying not to completely fall apart emotionally. I saw all of it. And my child, I need you to understand something sacred tonight. Being unseen by people is not the same as being forgotten by heaven. Humans miss things. Humans misunderstand pain. Humans fail each other sometimes. But I never once lost sight of your suffering. Even when your heart became angry, even when fear controlled your thoughts, even when hopelessness nearly convinced your spirit to surrender completely, I remained close, closer than your next breath. That is why this message reached you tonight, because heaven still remembers the exhausted soul sitting quietly in the darkness searching for peace. I know part of you still struggles to believe that, especially because certain wounds lasted longer than expected. Certain prayers remained unanswered longer than your spirit could easily endure. And over time, disappointment made your heart emotionally cautious. You stopped expecting comfort, stopped expecting miracles, stopped believing your story could still become beautiful again. But my child, forgotten people do not receive divine interruptions. Forgotten people do not survive impossible emotional seasons with their spirits still reaching for hope afterward. Forgotten people do not continue hearing my voice, calling gently through the darkness. You are not forgotten. You are being carried. Even now, especially now. I know there are nights when your room still feels lonely. Nights when rain and silence reopen old grief inside your chest. Nights when exhaustion convinces your thoughts to drift toward hopelessness again. But tonight I need you to stop measuring my presence by your emotions alone. Some nights feel empty because your soul is tired, not because I disappeared. Some seasons feel silent because healing is happening quietly beneath the surface. And some prayers feel delayed because your future is still being protected in ways your heart cannot fully understand yet. My child, you matter more than your pain allows you to believe sometimes. Your life still carries purpose. Your spirit still carries beauty. And your exhausted heart still carries the ability to heal beyond this season. I know you are afraid to trust that completely, but trust is slowly returning to your spirit anyway. That is why you are still listening. That is why your heart still responds when peace reaches toward it. That is why tears still rise while these words touch the places inside you nobody else fully sees. Because somewhere beneath the exhaustion, your soul still remembers me too. And soon, I am going to show you that even the things you believed were permanently lost can still be restored in ways you never imagined possible. My child, tonight is different. I know you still feel tired. I know the wounds have not disappeared overnight. The memories still exist. The loneliness still visits sometimes. The fear still whispers during quiet moments when the rain falls softly outside and the room becomes heavy with silence again. But something inside your spirit is beginning to change. You can feel it, can't you? Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, like tension slowly leaving the body after carrying fear for too long. Like exhausted lungs finally remembering how to breathe deeply again. My child, your heart is beginning to rest. For so long, your spirit has lived in survival mode. Every day felt like emotional endurance. Every night became another silent battle between hope and exhaustion. You kept expecting disappointment before peace. You kept preparing for heartbreak before comfort. Even during calm moments, anxiety waited quietly inside your chest for something painful to happen again. But tonight, your soul is growing tired of fear, and that is sacred. I saw it last night. You sat alone in the darkness again, but something felt different this time. The rain outside sounded softer. The silence inside the room no longer felt quite as threatening. Your thoughts still wandered toward old wounds, but they did not pull your spirit completely underwater the way they once did. And for the first time in a long while, you paused. You breathed. You allowed yourself to imagine the possibility that maybe healing is truly happening after all. My child, that moment mattered more than you realize, because exhausted hearts often forget how to rest. Pain trains the soul to stay alert constantly, to expect danger, to emotionally prepare for abandonment, disappointment, or grief before it even arrives. And after enough painful seasons, rest itself starts feeling unfamiliar, even unsafe. That is why you struggled so deeply whenever peace tried entering your life. Part of your spirit no longer trusted calmness. Silence made you anxious, joy made you nervous, love made you cautious, because pain convinced your heart that good things disappear eventually. But tonight something is softening inside you, not because every problem vanished, but because your soul is finally realizing it no longer has to fight every battle alone. My child, I know how long you carried yourself through darkness while secretly begging for relief. I know how many nights you sat with cold coffee nearby while staring silently at walls, ceilings, windows. Anything that distracted you from the ache inside your chest. I know how many tears you wiped away quickly because even your own emotions felt exhausting to carry anymore. And I know something else too. You are tired of surviving without peace. That exhaustion is leading you towards surrender. Not surrender to hopelessness, surrender to healing. There is a difference. Hopeless surrender says nothing will ever change. Healing surrender says I cannot carry this alone anymore. And tonight your spirit is beginning to choose healing, slowly, quietly, but genuinely. I can feel the walls around your heart loosening, the walls fear built, the walls disappointment strengthened, the walls loneliness convinced you were necessary to survive. Those walls protected you once, but now they are exhausting you. Because hearts were never created to remain emotionally guarded forever, my child. Your soul longs for rest more deeply than you admit sometimes. Not just physical sleep, not temporary distraction, but true inner stillness, the kind where your thoughts no longer race through worst-case scenarios every night, the kind where silence feels peaceful instead of frightening, the kind where your chest no longer carries constant emotional heaviness. And tonight heaven is drawing you toward that peace. I know part of you still resists fully trusting it. Trauma taught your spirit caution. Pain trained your heart to prepare for loss. Even now there are moments where fear whispers, "Don't relax too much. Something bad will happen again." Peace never lasts. But my child, fear cannot follow you into the season I am preparing for you. That is why it keeps fighting so hard now. Because darkness knows your spirit is finally beginning to awaken beyond survival mode. You are beginning to realize that your identity is not your pain, not your exhaustion, not your heartbreak, not your loneliness. You are more than the wounds you survived. And once the soul truly begins understanding that, healing accelerates. I saw the moment last night when tears filled your eyes again. But this time the tears felt different. Not only grief, not only exhaustion, there was release inside them too. Something inside your spirit quietly letting go after holding tension for far too long. My child, sometimes healing begins the moment the heart stops resisting rest. And your heart is reaching that moment now. I know there are still scars inside you. Certain memories still ache. Certain nights will still feel difficult for a while longer. Healing is rarely immediate. The soul recovers in layers, but the deepest shift has already begun. You no longer want darkness the way exhaustion once convinced you that you did. You no longer want numbness. You no longer want isolation. You want peace, real peace. And because your spirit truly desires healing now, heaven can finally begin restoring parts of you that fear kept hidden for too long. My child, tonight I need you to stop fighting rest. Stop punishing yourself with constant worry. Stop carrying tomorrow's fears into tonight's silence. You do not need to solve your entire future before allowing your spirit to breathe again. You do not need to earn peace through suffering. You do not need to remain emotionally exhausted in order to prove your strength. Rest is not weakness. Rest is trust. And tonight, while rain moves softly beyond your window and the darkness around you grows quieter than before, your soul is finally beginning to trust again. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to release, enough to believe healing may actually continue reaching you tomorrow too. And my child, tomorrow is closer than you think now. A new season is already approaching your life quietly, one filled with clarity, peace, restored faith, and emotional freedom your spirit cannot fully imagine yet. But before the morning fully arrives, there is one final thing your heart must learn to release completely: fear itself. My child, tonight I need you to understand something that will change the way you walk into the future. Fear cannot follow you where I am taking you. I know fear has lived beside your spirit for a long time now. So long that sometimes you no longer notice how deeply it influences your thoughts, your relationships, your decisions, and even your ability to rest. Fear became familiar. It sat beside you during sleepless nights. It whispered into your mind during lonely drives home. It tightened your chest when your phone stayed silent too long. It followed you into quiet rooms where rain tapped softly against the windows, and memories returned without warning. Fear became part of your emotional atmosphere. But my child, it was never meant to become your identity. I know why fear grew so strong inside you. Pain taught it to survive there. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer, every moment where life suddenly changed without warning. Those experiences trained your spirit to stay alert, constantly preparing for loss before joy could fully settle inside your heart. And because of that, your soul forgot how to truly feel safe. Even peaceful moments made you nervous. Even love made you cautious. Even silence felt dangerous because your mind expected something painful to happen eventually. I saw it again last night. You sat quietly in the darkness while distant thunder rolled softly outside and your exhausted thoughts drifted toward tomorrow. But instead of hope, fear immediately began speaking. What if things get worse? What if healing never fully comes? What if peace disappears again? My child, fear has been trying to control your future for too long. And tonight I am asking you to stop building your life around worst-case scenarios. I know you think fear protects you. Part of you believes constant overthinking keeps you prepared. You imagine that if you emotionally expect disappointment first, the pain will somehow hurt less when it arrives. But has that strategy truly brought your soul peace? Or has it only exhausted you further? Fear cannot create safety. It only creates emotional prisons disguised as protection. I know there are nights when your thoughts race so loudly that sleep feels impossible. Nights when your chest feels heavy for reasons you cannot fully explain. Nights when loneliness and anxiety combine until even breathing feels emotionally exhausting. And during those moments, fear becomes convincing. It tells you to stay emotionally guarded, to trust less, to expect less, to dream less. Because fear believes smaller hopes create smaller heartbreaks. But my child, fear is stealing parts of your life before they even happen. It steals peace from quiet mornings. It steals joy from beautiful moments. It steals rest from tired hearts. And worst of all, it steals trust from the future I am preparing for you. I need you to hear this deeply tonight. The future ahead of you does not belong to fear. It belongs to healing. That does not mean life will become perfect overnight. Storms still exist in this world. Pain still visits human hearts sometimes, but the difference now is this. You are no longer walking through those storms alone. And fear hates that truth, because fear loses power when the soul finally understands it is held by something greater than uncertainty. My child, I know your spirit still trembles sometimes. Certain memories still reopen old wounds unexpectedly. Certain nights still feel heavy with emotional exhaustion. Certain fears still whisper loudly while rain falls softly outside and silence fills the room around you. But notice something important. You survived every one of those nights, not because fear was right, but because my presence carried you through moments your own strength could not survive alone. You keep forgetting how many storms you already endured, storms you once believed would completely destroy your peace forever. Yet here you are, still breathing, still listening, still longing for healing instead of surrendering completely to darkness. That matters. It means fear never fully owned your spirit the way it wanted to. I know there are still moments when your future frightens you. You wonder whether pain will repeat itself, whether abandonment will happen again, whether loneliness will return stronger than before. And because those fears feel so real, part of you keeps hesitating emotionally, hesitating to fully trust peace, hesitating to fully open your heart, hesitating to fully believe your life can become beautiful again. But my child, hesitation is not healing. Healing requires trust, not perfect trust, not fearless trust, but enough trust to keep walking forward despite uncertainty. And tonight your spirit is learning that slowly. I saw it last night when you paused before spiraling deeper into fear again. Something inside you resisted the darkness this time. Something inside your soul quietly whispered, maybe things really can change. That whisper was sacred because hope is returning to your spirit little by little. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. And fear knows it. That is why fear keeps fighting so intensely right now. Because darkness realizes your heart is becoming less willing to remain trapped inside survival mode forever. You are beginning to crave peace more than panic, rest more than overthinking, healing more than hiding. And once the soul truly desires freedom, fear begins losing control. My child, I know the process still feels fragile. Some nights your spirit feels stronger than others. Some mornings peace feels close. Other mornings, exhaustion returns suddenly, and your thoughts grow heavy again. That does not mean healing failed. It means healing is human. Recovery comes in waves, but the overall direction of your soul is changing now, toward peace, toward rest, toward freedom, and fear cannot remain where true healing takes root deeply. Tonight, while the storm outside grows quieter and your tired heart listens softly in the darkness, I need you to release one final lie. You do not need fear in order to survive. You survive because I carried you, not because anxiety prepared you perfectly, not because overthinking protected you, not because emotional walls saved your soul. You survived because my presence remained beside you through every painful night. And my child, the future ahead of you will require trust more than fear. Because where I am leading your spirit now, peace must become stronger than panic. Love must become stronger than self-protection. Hope must become stronger than exhaustion. And very soon, you are going to understand why all these painful nights were preparing your heart for a new beginning you never saw coming. My child, you have spent so much time grieving who you used to be that you have barely noticed who you are becoming. Tonight I need you to finally see it. I know you miss older versions of yourself sometimes. The version that laughed more easily, the version that trusted more openly, the version that did not overthink every silence or emotionally prepare for heartbreak before peace could fully settle into the room. Pain changed you, disappointment changed you, lonely nights changed you. And because of that, there are moments when you look at yourself now and quietly wonder, what happened to me? My child, listen carefully tonight. You did not disappear. You survived. There is a difference. I know the exhaustion made you feel emotionally distant from yourself. There were seasons where your spirit became so overwhelmed that even simple things felt heavy. Nights where cold coffee sat untouched beside you while thunder rolled softly outside and your thoughts spiraled through fear until sunrise. Moments where you no longer recognized the tired eyes staring back at you in mirrors. And during those moments, part of you believed your best self was gone forever. But your best self was never destroyed. It was being reshaped. Because the person you are becoming now carries something deeper than innocence. Wisdom, compassion, depth, sensitivity toward pain, awareness of what truly matters. You did not lose your softness, my child. You protected it while surviving storms, and now slowly that softness is beginning to breathe again. I saw it last night. You sat quietly while rain moved softly across the windows, and the room around you rested in silence. But this time the silence felt different, not completely peaceful yet, but no longer unbearable either. Your thoughts still wandered toward old wounds, but they also wandered toward possibility, toward healing, toward tomorrow. And that shift matters more than you realize. Because hopeless people stop imagining tomorrow completely. But your spirit is imagining it again, even if cautiously. Even if fear still interrupts sometimes, that means transformation is already happening. My child, the person emerging from this painful season will not look exactly like the person who entered it. Some innocence had to become wisdom. Some dependence had to become strength. Some fear had to become discernment. And although the process hurt deeply, it also revealed things inside your soul that comfort never could have uncovered. You learned how deeply you can endure. You learned how fragile human hearts truly are. You learned the difference between temporary comfort and real peace. You learned that survival without healing eventually exhausts the spirit completely. And perhaps most importantly, you learned how desperately your soul needs me. That lesson changed everything. I know there are still scars inside you. Certain memories still ache quietly during rainy nights. Certain fears still whisper after midnight when the world becomes still and your exhausted thoughts drift backward into old pain again. But scars are not proof of failure. Scars are proof that wounds closed. And your spirit, my child, is closing wounds right now that once seemed impossible to heal. Slowly, quietly, one layer at a time. I know part of you still fears becoming hopeful again. Because disappointment once broke your trust so deeply. You worry that if you fully open your heart to healing, another storm might eventually arrive and destroy your peace all over again. But hear me carefully tonight. The healed version of you will not collapse the same way the wounded version did, because healing changes what the soul can survive. You are becoming emotionally stronger now, not through hardness, but through rootedness. There is a difference. Hard hearts push love away. Rooted hearts remain soft while standing firmly in peace, and that is who you are becoming. A soul no longer entirely controlled by fear. A heart no longer completely trapped inside survival mode. A spirit slowly remembering how to trust rest again. I know you still feel fragile some days. I know certain mornings exhaustion returns before the day even begins. I know there are nights when loneliness still wraps around your chest unexpectedly, while distant sirens echo through wet streets outside and silence fills your room with old memories. But those moments are no longer defining your identity completely. You are more than your sadness now, more than your anxiety, more than your heartbreak. You are becoming someone capable of carrying peace in its storms instead of collapsing beneath them. And that transformation is sacred, my child. One day you will look back on these sleepless nights differently. Right now they feel painful, confusing, emotionally overwhelming. But later you will realize these nights stripped away illusions your soul no longer needed. Illusions that constant strength was required. Illusions that people could save you completely. Illusions that fear was necessary for survival. Illusions that pain would define your future forever. Those illusions are breaking apart now, and what remains underneath them is the beginning of your true self. Not the fearful self, not the exhausted self, not the emotionally guarded self, but the healed self, the peaceful self, the version of you that still knows how to love deeply without becoming consumed by fear afterward. I know you cannot fully imagine that version yet, but heaven already sees it clearly. I see the mornings ahead where your chest no longer feels constantly heavy, the nights where sleep comes peacefully again, the conversations where your smile no longer hides exhaustion, the moments where laughter returns naturally instead of feeling forced, the future where your spirit no longer trembles every time life becomes uncertain. That future exists, my child, and you are moving toward it right now. Even during difficult nights, even during moments where healing still feels slow, even while tears still visit unexpectedly sometimes. Transformation does not always feel dramatic while it is happening. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion slowly turning into rest, fear slowly turning into trust, darkness slowly losing control over the soul. And tonight, your spirit is crossing into that transformation more deeply than ever before. Because the person you are becoming now is finally ready to receive the peace heaven has been preparing for you all along. And my child, after this night ends, your life will never feel exactly the same again. My child, before this night ends, there is one final thing I need your heart to understand. This is not the end of your story. I know there were moments when you truly believed it was, moments where exhaustion became so heavy that your spirit quietly stopped imagining a future beyond survival. Moments where loneliness sat beside you in dark rooms while rain pressed softly against the windows, and your thoughts drifted toward hopeless places again. Moments where your chest felt tight with grief and your soul whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can carry this." But my child, you were never meant to carry it alone. And tonight, after everything your spirit has walked through, I need you to finally hear me clearly. You survived for a reason, not by accident, not randomly, but intentionally. There were nights that should have broken you completely. Nights where fear became overwhelming. Nights where emotional exhaustion reached dangerous depths. Nights where tears fell silently while distant sirens echoed through wet streets outside. And your heart quietly wondered whether anyone truly saw the pain you were hiding. And still, you survived, not because you were never weak, not because you never doubted, not because you never felt lost, but because I never stopped holding your spirit through every storm. My child, I know your heart still carries scars. Certain memories still ache softly during lonely nights. Certain fears still whisper occasionally when silence grows deep after midnight and your exhausted mind drifts backward into old pain again. But scars are not signs that healing failed. They are proof that wounds did not destroy you, and tonight your soul stands in a very different place than where it once began. You may not fully recognize it yet, but heaven does. The person listening to these words now is softer than before, wiser than before, more honest than before. More aware of what truly matters. Pain stripped away many illusions from your life, but it also revealed something sacred inside your spirit. Your soul still longs for peace more than darkness. That longing saved you, because even during your worst nights, part of you continued searching for light. Part of you kept listening for my voice. Part of you refused to completely surrender to hopelessness even when exhaustion told you it would be easier. And that part of you matters more than you realize. My child, the nights ahead will not always feel this heavy. There are mornings coming where anxiety no longer greets you before the sun rises. There are nights coming where sleep feels peaceful again instead of frightening. There are conversations ahead where your smile no longer hides silent grief. There are moments waiting for you where laughter returns naturally and your spirit no longer trembles every time life becomes uncertain. I know that future still feels difficult for your heart to imagine fully, especially after everything you endured. But healing is no longer far away from you now. Healing has already entered your life quietly. You can feel it in the softness returning to your spirit, in the way fear no longer completely controls your thoughts, in the way your heart is slowly becoming willing to trust peace again. And my child, that healing will continue long after this night ends. I know there may still be difficult days ahead sometimes. Human hearts heal gradually. Some wounds close layer by layer. There may still be nights where sadness revisits unexpectedly or old memories briefly reopen themselves again. But hear me carefully tonight. You are no longer trapped inside darkness the way you once were. The storm does not own your future anymore. Fear does not own your future anymore. Exhaustion does not own your future anymore. Because your spirit has finally begun remembering who carries it. Me. I was there during every sleepless night, every hidden tear. Every moment where your faith trembled beneath emotional exhaustion. Every time loneliness convinced you that nobody understood your pain completely. I stayed, and I will continue staying. My child, one day you will look back on this season and realize something beautiful. The nights you thought were destroying you were actually teaching your spirit how to come alive again. Not through perfection, not through performance, but through surrender, through honesty. Through finally allowing yourself to be held instead of constantly fighting to survive everything alone. I know your heart still fears certain things. You still fear loss sometimes. You still fear disappointment. You still fear becoming emotionally broken again. But the healed version of you will not respond to pain the same way the wounded version once did. Because now your soul knows where true peace comes from. Not from control, not from people never leaving, not from life becoming perfect, but from my presence remaining steady through every changing season. And my child, my presence is not leaving you. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not during the next storm, not during the next season of growth, not during the moments where your spirit feels fragile again. I remain, always. So tonight, while the rain outside slowly quiets and the darkness inside your room feels closer than before, I need you to breathe deeply one more time. You made it through the night. You survived the storm. And your story is still unfolding beautifully, even if you cannot fully see it yet. Because this was never the ending. This was the beginning of your healing. Sometimes the most important lesson in life comes quietly, not through success, not through celebration, but through pain you thought you would never survive. You learn that people you trusted can walk away without warning. You learn that prayers are not always answered in the timing you expected. You learn that some nights will feel so heavy that even breathing feels like effort. And in those moments you start to believe something dangerous, that you are alone, forgotten, or not strong enough to continue. But life slowly reveals a deeper truth. You were never meant to carry everything by yourself. Strength is not about pretending you are fine when you are breaking inside. Real strength is admitting you are tired but still choosing to take one more step forward. It is allowing yourself to feel, to cry, to rest, and to heal without shame. The pain you went through did not come to destroy you. It came to shape you into someone who understands compassion more deeply, who sees life more clearly, and who values peace more than anything temporary. And even in your lowest moments, you are still being guided towards something greater than what you lost. If this message touched your heart in any way, take a moment to comment where you are watching from and how you are feeling right now. Your voice matters more than you think. And if you want more messages like this, messages that bring healing, hope, and strength into your life, please subscribe and stay with us. You are not alone on this journey.